and Matthew Tkachuk thinks it's a real good fit for Kevin Hayes here in St. Louis, thinks he's going to have a good year. So the numbers that you rattled off, that start he had in Philadelphia before things went sour last year, the Blues would love that. And they're getting them, as we know, at that 50% discount rate. This is what Doug Armstrong kind of envisioned during the retool, that he's going to bring in a couple guys who have that type of potential at half the cost. Kevin Hayes is one of those guys, and the Blues would love that production.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That audio you just heard was Jeremy Rutherford on the show a little while ago. Alex, you have been highly impressed with what you've seen so far from the Blues offseason edition in Kevin Hayes. Now, for people that don't remember that audio, we talked about the clip where JR mentioned the first 53 games from last year. Alex, in that stretch, Kevin Hayes had 17 goals, 30 assists. He was a 47-point in 53-game player. That is almost a point-per-game producer. And then the last half of the season, things went awry. It didn't go well for him. Him and Torts didn't see eye to eye. I don't hold that against Kevin Hayes personally.
I don't think many in the NHL would.
And so a lot of what the hopes are for this Blues team in 2023 are being put on the shoulders of their big offseason addition in Kevin Hayes. He's got the size. He's got the ability to distribute. He might have Jakub Vrana on one of his wings, which is a great natural-born goal scorer. Alex, I'm excited about Kevin Hayes.
Not
when
as
you
excited
come
as
into
me.
this show in the morning and you say, hey, BK, I think that the Blues have the second coming of a Hall of Fame centerman. I said to myself, all right, Alex, I'll let you cook, man. Why do you think Kevin Hayes is going to be a Hall of Famer and a Blue Note?
This is what the show has become now, just putting words in other people's mouths
My
and
jaw
then making them
dropped
look
when
like
you
an
said it,
idiot.
though.
Well, mine could drop, but I don't have 7 teeth because
I mean,
of the
it
problem.
was like
so.
Wayne Gretzky and then Kevin Hayes. And I was like, dude, come on. Like, they had Brett Hull at one point inside here in St. Louis. You're like, yeah,
when BK
this
started
guy's
to
going
push
to make
back.
you forget about Holly.
I did say we got a new Hall and Oates.
Yeah,
Hayes and Verona, Hall and Oates.
When BK started to push back, I went, hold up. Let him cook.
Yep, let me cook. Look, I did not say that, but what I did say was Kevin Hayes is going to be better than what Ryan O'Reilly was last season for the Blues. Ryan O'Reilly? How dare you? Look,
That man won a damn cup.
he did, but that was 4 years ago. That wasn't last year. And I never said Kevin Hayes is going to be better than Ryan O'Reilly. And look, it's unfair to put comps on him like this, but you look at replacing players that you had last year, and that's really how this team becomes a playoff team. You lose certain players that you had high expectations for, and you replace them with the guys you have now. You could do it with Vladdy, with having Jakub Vrana for a full season. You could do it with Barbashev, whomever you want to put into that spot. Maybe it is Oscar Sundqvist. Maybe it's another player who's getting a higher role. Maybe it's Kapanen. Yeah. But for me, losing Ryan O'Reilly was massive for this team. But getting Kevin Hayes is an added benefit for the Blues, because what Ryan O'Reilly was last year was somebody who was trying to do so much and really could never capture the magic that he had with David Perron. 12 goals and 7 assists in 40 games was a -24. Defensively, he had a rough go about it, but frankly for him, he was playing with Josh Levo on the top line, so it's not an easy thing to go about.
To be fair, he was playing with Josh Levo because that's the only player that he could figure out how to get him going.
Absolutely. There was a certain way to play, and that's how this works. What I love about Kevin Hayes, and I'm telling you guys, it was the first game of the preseason. It was Columbus. Look at who they played, Ferrario. I get it. But Kevin Hayes solely was responsible for multiple plays that were impressive to me. One, he broke up a play after a turnover by his line mate on the other side of the ice. Back check. And, I mean, Kevin Hayes is a big dude. It's not like he's the fastest dude out there, but back check broke that play up. I think it was 46% from the faceoff dot. Not what Ryan O'Reilly was when he's like 56%, but, I mean, Kevin Hayes is a career like 45% faceoff guy. But what he did that was most impressive to me, and Joey mentioned on the pregame with me, Kevin Hayes plays so much like Pat Maroon in terms of puck possession, to where when it's on his stick, you can't get it away from him. He single-handedly drove an offensive zone time that was north of 90 seconds. It was him, Verana, and Blais that kept the puck in the offensive zone. They came away with 3 shots on that shift, and then while they held onto the puck in the offensive zone, they got 3 new bodies onto the ice. Now, they didn't score in that circumstance, but Kevin Hayes, to me, provides the depth down the middle that you didn't have last year. Thomas is your number 1. Schen's going to be your number 2. But welcome to having 3 legit centermen that could be 15 to 20 goal scorers for you.
So I've heard a lot of talk this offseason about size and heaviness, and they're getting back to physicality, BK. I don't buy any of it. I really don't. I think they are bigger.
You didn't watch your boy Nick Ritchie get into a fight and then get tossed because his jersey wasn't attached.
We'll get to him here in a minute.
Come on.
I'm not buying the notion that this team is suddenly going to go out there with this brute force and physicality that's going to overwhelm its opposition. I don't know that that's Kevin Hayes' game, honestly. I think Kevin Hayes is skilled. He's a big dude, and that reach will help him, like on that play that you mentioned from last night where he was back checking and he's able to get his stick in the right spot, and he helps to break up a potential breakaway goal going the other direction. That's important. You need that. But what he really does is he brings the ability to put up points. And you need to be able to outscore your issues that are behind you defensively going into this year. Alex, I wrote down yesterday what I think the players are that are basically the one-for-one replacements of who held that spot at this point last year, okay?
All right, let's see which ones you got wrong.
You just mentioned Kevin Hayes has the potential to be better this year than what Ryan O'Reilly was for the Blues last year. That sounds crazy. I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think Ryan O'Reilly was very good for the Blues last year, and we were unwilling to say it early on because it's Ryan O'Reilly, and this is the captain, and this is a guy that's taking everything on his shoulders, won a Stanley Cup, won the Conn Smythe, like everything that you can put on Ryan O'Reilly's name, it doesn't take away from any of that. That all still applies. But last year he wasn't very good. It's okay. It happens. Guys end up going in the aging curve, and then it went awry for him. Kasperi Kapanen, I think, is your replacement for Ivan Barbashev. That one I don't think. You're going to get better production. I think you can get similar production, though, to what you had with Barbashev last year. I don't think you're going to fall off a cliff in that regard. I think Vrana is going to be flat out a better hockey player for the Blues than what Vladimir Tarasenko was for you last year. I think that's your direct one-for-one replacement there. Yeah, it's going to be a liability defensively, but we'll get to this later today. I think Vrana can score 40 goals for the Blues this year, and I don't think that's crazy.
Welcome to the club.
Blay is your replacement for Nathan Walker, who was in the lineup on opening night last year. And then Sonny is your Noel Acciari replacement. And I think at worst, those are a push.
And then also remember, you played a lot of Josh Levo and Tyler Pitlick and Logan Brown.
I forgot about Pitlick.
You're going to have Nick Ritchie. You're going to have all of Alexei Toropchenko, who was in and out of the lineup last season. And you're going to have Jake Neighbors.
I'm not telling you everything is hunky-dory. It's all rainbows and butterflies here in St. Louis with the Blues. They absolutely could miss the playoffs this year. 100% could miss the playoffs this year. But Kevin Hayes, one of the first things that has to happen, he has to outperform what you got last year from Ryan O'Reilly. There's a bunch of other stuff that has to go right. Got to get Vrana to be the player that he was before all of the off-ice stuff. You got to get Thomas and Kyrou to take that next step. You need your defensive core to be able to get back to where they were 2 years ago and not what they were last year. But I think your piece on Kevin Hayes is the single most important piece because it has to be the starting point. You had a very bad year up the middle last season. Kevin Hayes has a chance to be able to change that.
When I watched Kevin Hayes last night, and again, it was one game, but watching him with Vrana and Blay, that one game to me solidified that's going to be your line on opening night. Berube likes to go off of pairs, and I don't know who the third guy on that line is going to be, but the pair is absolutely Hayes and Vrana. I mean, Vrana scored the goal off of the faceoff last night. It didn't get the assist, but Hayes won that faceoff, and Vrana picked up the puck and took it to the net and scored. Hayes possesses the puck. I'm telling you, when it is on his stick, you'll see once there are more games that are able for people to see, unless you're at Enterprise Center, because I know it's just streaming. He is very difficult to take the puck off of his stick. I mean, we're talking about a guy that when he's in the offensive zone, he's able to circle around. You mentioned the reach. You got a guy at 6'6" now. All of this comes down to him being reliable in the defensive zone. But also take into consideration, Ryan O'Reilly was playing like 19 minutes a night last year for this Blues team. Kevin Hayes might see 16 minutes a night on average, maybe 17.
That's not a bad thing.
That's a good thing, because now you've got three fresh bodies to roll out there to have three deep lines of scoring. And I think the fact that Hayes can do this, the fact that you're looking to Vrana to be a goal scorer and Kapanen placing your top nine, it gives you depth of scoring that you did not have last year. Last year, you had one line that scored, and everybody else was non-existent for this Blues team.
So the other thing that I wanted to get to today, Alex, because as we continue to watch this team in the preseason, I continue to wonder what the role is for Jake Neighbors. Because it sure seems like they've got their mindset on Sammy Blay being a third-line player. And I'm not telling them they shouldn't. I get it. Finished the season really well. Had a great summer with Team Canada. Comes into camp, appears to be in a good spot. He seems to have some chemistry with the line that he's working with right now. So, cool. Put him on that third line. That drops Jake Neighbors to the fourth line. But Nick Ritchie's here now. And Nick Ritchie got in a fight last night. Looks to be driving some of the offense. I heard over the weekend he wasn't super impressive in the game that they played in Wichita. Didn't see it with my own eyes, but that was kind of the report that came back. And then last night, thought Nick Ritchie was really solid. Now, probably should strap on your fight straps. That way your jersey doesn't get pulled over your head and you have to leave the game. But, that's something we'll get taken care of down the road. If Nick Ritchie makes this team, Alex, and you have Ritchie and Toropchenko as your two fourth-line wingers, I think the guy that directly impacts the most is Jake Neighbors. Because if I am in Doug Armstrong's shoes, Neighbors he doesn't have to go through waivers. He can immediately go to the AHL if they wanted to send him down. I'm not having that guy as my 13th forward. There's no value in that. I would rather have him down as my top-line winger in the AHL to start out the season while I've got proven NHL players on that fourth line that are playing exactly the style that I want them to. So for me, I think the real competition here, the rest of camp, is Jake Neighbors versus Nick Ritchie for one of those fourth line winger spots.
Yeah, I mean, the way I view this is the Blues are going to go 13 forwards and 8 defensemen. It's what they typically always do unless they surprise all of us and go 14-7. But if you're going 13-8, 12 guys are accounted for. And the 13th comes down to Jake Neighbors or Nick Ritchie. Now, in a certain situation, like the way I viewed it, Ritchie, Sonny, and Toropchenko is an ideal fourth line for Craig Berube. Yep. So as much as I do believe like it's Jake Neighbors versus Nick Ritchie to make this team, I think the competition is actually Jake Neighbors or Sammy Blais. Who makes more sense playing on that line with Kevin Hayes? Because if Jake Neighbors doesn't fit on that line, I can absolutely see a scenario where they look at it and say, look, Jake, we love you and the way that you play, but you're not a fourth-line winger for us. You're a top-9 winger for us. And frankly, it's going to be tough for you to crack that playing time. So let's go back to the AHL, and you'll play with Bolduc and Dean. Now, I would imagine Jake Neighbors is going to be playing in the next few games, and Jake Neighbors is going to have a little bit of motivation going into this. But if you're the Blues, I go back to the comment that Doug Armstrong had in the offseason when he was talking about taking care of these young players. And he said, we're going to put them in the water, and if it looks like they're struggling, we're going to pick them up, and we're going to put them into a different pool of water to see if they can have success there.
Throw them into the deep end. If they start to swink, we're going to save them, and we're going to go put them into the kiddie pool.
Exactly, and that's what you're doing in this.
Huh?
Swink? That's what you said, swink. What is that?
You said swink. I think you meant to say sink, and it came out swim, sink. And look, don't bash on my guy over here. He's working. He's cooking.
I was going to let him cook, and then I saw it was on fire.
And then you saw him swinking, and you're like, I better save him.
Here. We're swinking.
We're swinking. Anyway, what benefits you more long term? 21-year-old Jake Neighbors, who's getting top playing time in the minors, and having a Nikita Alexandrov or a Mackenzie McEachern or a Nathan Walker as that 13th forward? Or putting Jake Neighbors on the roster and having him be the 13th forward, or playing on the fourth line. I personally believe if you have the upside of Jake Neighbors and expecting 20 goals from him, if he doesn't crack the top 9, he's going to be in the minors. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That's just the growth process that you're going through with this retool.
Time to swink or sim. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get to some NFL quick hitters. More on the Blues coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. We'll discuss Jakub Vrana and what his role is going to be for this team. You guys can get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can always watch us as well on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. But coming up next, Miles Mikolas deserves a little bit of praise for one thing only, Alex. I'll tell you what that is next here on 101 ESPN.
I mean, it's maybe one number that I can get that I can maybe hang my hat on at the end of what I'd consider a pretty rough year for myself. So if I could somehow squeak out 200 innings, I think it says a lot about, just kind of like a full body of work. That might be one number that you could look at the end of the season that's not bad. So I'll try to get there.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That was Miles Mikolas last night after his outing, which went really well for Mikolas, talking about why he wants to get to 200 innings this season. Alex, yesterday the Cardinals decided to move his start up a day for him to be able to start one more time on Sunday, the final game of the season, in hopes that he can get to 200 innings. He's at 194 right now. Alex, I think there are plenty of reasons to be critical of Miles Mikolas' performance this year. It hasn't been overly impressive, especially in the second half of the year. He has one of the lowest strikeout rates among qualified pitchers in Major League Baseball, and he is a guy that just has failed to miss bats in a league and in a season in which it has become more valuable than ever to miss bats because of the changing rules that we have seen implemented into the game this season. When I look at what he's done, though, since joining the Cardinals back in 2018, the guy has been remarkably consistent. We talk about the value of having a player like Aaron Nola at the front of your rotation. Mikolas, while he does not have the swing and miss stuff, and he may not have the same quality as what you've seen from a guy like Nola, he does have the overall workload of guys like that. He's hoping to get to 200 innings. And the only other pitchers in Major League Baseball that can get there this year in the National League are Logan Webb, Zach Gallen, Mitch Keller, and Aaron Nola. He's one of 5 pitchers that have an opportunity this year to get to 200 innings. That's meaningful. When you look at what he's done in terms of just going out there and making his starts every 5 days, guys, since the end of the since he came off of the IL in 2021, he has not hit the IL a single time. Not a single time, not one stint on the injured list since his return from Tommy John in 2021. It's been pretty damn impressive, his availability in that stretch of time. I know that the effectiveness this year has not been there, but what you saw yesterday and his ability to go out there every 5th day, I do think that has value to the Cardinals both this year and beyond.
To me, it's no coincidence that it was the final year of Adam Wainwright and Miles Mikolas earned that 2-year contract extension. And I was the one that was clamoring for Jordan Montgomery in the offseason, but you lose somebody who at his best was always giving you 200-plus innings to keep somebody who at his best provides you 200-plus innings, and that's Miles Mikolas. Here's the inconsistency part with Miles. Is last year the Miles I'm getting, or is this year the Miles that I'm getting? And I think that's the conundrum the Cardinals are in, because last year you could make the argument that was legit a number 2 starting pitcher for you in your rotation. And you're looking at this as saying, let's go get a number 1 and low-level number 3, and we're having a great offseason. This year he's been at best a number 3. And now you're wondering, how do we go about this? To me, I would look more towards this season and say, this is Miles Mikolas, 200 innings. He's going to have some bad starts, but every single night he's going to give you 6 or 7 innings and at least keep you in the game. But I still approach this offseason with the 1 and 2. And at best, if Miles Mikolas goes back to what last year was, then you've got another guy who could be a number 2, and your rotation's in a better position here. But the one thing we've all complained about all season long is this pitching staff, the rotation is inconsistent.
Yeah.
Other than Miles Mikolas.
I would say he's a solid 3 or 4. And that's how you should treat him going into next season.
But the hard part is last year and then 2018, you see the signs of it and you're like, damn, this is what Miles Mikolas actually is.
I don't think he can be that without the shift. And I think that's why you could see those kind of numbers. Now, I will say this too, and it goes to the conversation we had about Snell yesterday. Someone said, well, you can't pay Blake Snell because he's probably never going to be the guy he's been this year again. I would operate under the same assumption of Mikolas, prepare for him to be a 3 and don't expect him to be a 2. And if he ends up being a 2, 100%. Well, the more the merrier. Then you have 2 number 2s in your rotation because you're signing one of them. But I think because Mikolas is a guy that, to your point, can be consistent with innings and is potentially going to reach the 200-inning threshold for the 3rd time in his career, that's a guy that you can say, okay, we know we've got an innings eater. Maybe we can go with someone like a Blake Snell or a Yamamoto who's not going to eat up as much innings. That maybe instead of looking for an Aaron Nola as our number 1, quote unquote, who's going to cover 200 innings, we already have that 200-inning guy. Let's go get someone that may be more effective and throws less innings, and that's what I think is so important about Mikolas being able to get to that 200 inning threshold. It allows you to go more for swing and miss and less innings from your number one because you got an innings eater in the middle of the rotation.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday talking about something similar to this, T-Bone, and they were breaking down the National League Cy Young candidates. And one of the guys that's in that conversation is Logan Webb, the starting pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. And one of the guys was making the argument for him and basically saying, like, hey, listen, I know the Giants have not been a particularly good team this year, but they're still in the wild card race technically at this point. And the only reason why that is possible is because of Logan Webb giving them innings. Like, you look at the way that the San Diego Padres rotation operates versus the Giants rotation. The Giants rotation basically operates with Logan Webb as the fulcrum. He is the pivot point. If he doesn't give them innings, they're screwed for the next 4 days because their bullpen can't hold up. They don't have other starters that get deep into games. And so he gives them the ability to go with openers on other days. He gives them the ability to have a number 5 starter that gives them 4, and then they cover the back end of that game with some of their relievers, giving them an extended look in that game. Mikolas gives you that. He does give you the ability to go out there, and whether it's Yamamoto, who maybe is not going to get deeper into games here while he's in St. Louis, or because he was on a 6-man rotation in Japan, you don't want him to get as deep into games to keep the innings down a little bit once he gets over to Major League Baseball. Or maybe it is a Blake Snell. Whoever your guy is that you're looking at and saying, they got swing and miss stuff, but they don't get quite as deep into games. I think you're right, T-Bone, that Mikolas allows you to maybe get more in on those players than you otherwise would be able to. I think we have gone so far, and trust me, as a numbers guy, I believe in this trend, but I think sometimes you can go a little bit too far in the direction of swing and miss, 5 and dive. There's no value in the innings. There is value in a guy that can just eat a bleep ton of innings over the course of the season. The thing that you got to do, though, is balance that with what your rotation is going to be in the playoffs. And that's why I would go into the next season with Miles Mikolas as my number 3 starter. And then my goal would be that I am such a good team that by the trade deadline, I can go acquire a guy that slots in ahead of Miles Mikolas in my rotation. So Mikolas is getting 1 start in every round of the postseason. That's it. 1 start as my number 4 starter next year.
Yeah, and I mean, best case scenario is Miles Mikolas pitches next year like he did last year, and you are talking about a dude who you're pretending is number 3. You went after 1 and 2, and he's pitching like a number 2. And I know we're getting pushback of me saying that Mikolas last year was a 2.
He was. No, last year Mikolas was awesome.
Guys, he pitched like Aaron Nola last year, and we're all wanting Aaron Nola this offseason.
Oh, hey, text line? Go look up. Do the comparison yourself. Look up Mikolas versus Nola over the past 2 full seasons.
It's the same pitcher.
And you tell me which one you'd rather have. If I did the blind taste test, I think many of you would end up taking Miles Mikolas in that comparison.
I would never.
I'm not telling you that you should.
Test, though.
I'm telling you that I think a lot of you would if I didn't include the strikeout numbers.
But what I'm saying is, pretend he is a 3 like we've just mentioned. Look at this season as saying this is what we are expecting from Miles Mikolas next year. So that I go out there and acquire Nola, Snell, Yamamoto, Imagana, one of these guys to be the 2, and then Miles Mikolas outperforms what the expectations are next year. That's how you build success for next season. You can't go into it saying, we've got Miles, let's get 1 more.
By the way, I think people are underestimating what he's been this year as well. I'm not telling you that he's been great, but like, how many times did we hear calls from people saying, hey, go get Lance Lynn? Why? You have a guy that's better than Lance Lynn right now.
Lynn stinks.
Your guy that you currently have as part of your rotation is quite a bit better than Lance Lynn was this season. They both have the same issue. It's the home run ball. Home run ball really got to Miles Mikolas this year. He's your Taijuan Walker. He's going to go out there. He's not going to throw. He's not going to strike out the world, but you know what he's going to give you every 5th day. And Taijuan Walker has been a really solid 3 or 4 starter for the Phillies this year, a team that has legitimate belief that they can win the World Series in 2023. That's what you could be next year. And just like the Phillies, like if you need to go out there and make an upgrade, you can do that by the time that you get to the postseason. All right, I want to hear 2 quick things from Ken Rosenthal, who was on Foul Territory yesterday, Alex. We talked a lot about the top 2 pitchers really on the market, which is Aaron Nola and Blake Snell. Let's start by hearing what Ken Rosenthal said on who would be a good fit this offseason for Blake Snell.
Next on the list, the likely National League Cy Young Award winner, Blake Snell. Now, if you're a team with a need at the top of the rotation, which is pretty much every team, Blake Snell looks really good right now. 1.20 ERA in his last 23 starts. That is Gibson-esque. He is a guy who is at the top of his game. I'll give you some teams where I think he fits really well. St. Louis Cardinals. Hello. They need multiple starting pitchers. Boston Red Sox. The Dodgers. Houston Astros. The Phillies. If they lose Aaron Nola. The Orioles. If they are willing to spend the money, Blake Snell would be a perfect fit for the Baltimore Orioles.
He just listed 6 teams and like, bap.
Well, and you cut it off. I should think you probably had 10 more.
He basically said every team in baseball could use a guy like Blake Snell. So that's not ideal. He did mention the Cardinals first, though. Wow. Specifically said Cardinals make a lot of sense.
Are we going to read into that?
Need versus actually happening. Oh, 2 different scenarios.
Could be either way. Maybe they get him. Maybe they're the team that's going to be connected to Blake Snell.
I've heard James.
Lefties.
I've heard James Paxton's pretty impressive.
Here's what he said about Aaron Nola.
Aaron Nola. Now, he's a guy who's had kind of an inconsistent year. I wonder where he's going to be as a free agent. I don't know that he's going to be in the Rodon territory, this $160 million range. I don't know if that's going to happen for him. But let's look at something here that shows you why Aaron Nola will appeal to teams. Innings pitched since 2018. Garrett Cole, 1,067 2/3. Aaron Nola is just 9 innings behind him. And then there's a gap to the next 2 on the list, Jose Berrios and Zach Wheeler. So Nola has been a workhorse. All of those teams that I mentioned that need starting pitching, St. Louis, Boston, you name it, right down the line, the Dodgers, the Astros. His postseason is going to be important for him because he's had this kind of inconsistent year. If he puts it together in the postseason, people are going to see the good Aaron Nola, the Aaron Nola that he's been for most of his career, and they will be intrigued.
So they're getting both?
I'm not sure anybody has a more important postseason coming up than Aaron Nola.
Oh, absolutely.
I think of the upcoming free agents, he is the one that stands the most to gain. Now, I don't think he can lose a whole lot because he's already had a bad season and people know exactly what they're getting for the most part with Nola. And this is the downside of what you'll get with him, which is decreasing velocity, decreasing strikeout rates, and a guy that's going to still go out there despite all of that and give you 180-plus innings every single season that he's on your team. The upside, though, is the guy can be a legitimate, maybe not number 1, but de facto number 1 in your rotation. He could be a number 2 that you try to upgrade from at the deadline by going out and acquiring whoever the top ace is that's available on the market that year. So Aaron Nola has a ton to gain this postseason. I do like what he said there at the beginning, though. He doesn't think he's going to be getting the Carlos Rodon type of a deal. 6 years, $160-ish million.
That's good.
If he ends up in that 5 years, 125, that is the type of range that I would be interested in Aaron Nola at.
Yeah, that's where I would be very comfortable with, and that's where I try and decide what makes more sense. Obviously, you have to decide which free agent would be willing to come here, but that or Blake Snell, and then you also take into consideration what else you could get with Nola. If you're talking about Imanaga. I need to say it faster like that. If we're talking him and Nola, that's a damn good offseason if you can accomplish that.
Yeah, and I think that 5-year deal is about where the Cardinals would be comfortable. I don't know if they'll go 7 years, and I don't know if they want to go more than $125 million over the long term of a contract. And that feels like settling on that second tier. But if Aaron Nola's in that second tier, you still got a pretty good number one starter for you in your rotation, the de facto number 1, and then you hope you can develop that number 1 in the next 2-3 years.
That's Tanner Hendrickson. He's Alex Ferrario, and I'm Brandon Kiley. If you guys have any questions for us, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up next, we're diving into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Taylor Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals beat the Brewers last night 4-1, and the Milwaukee Brewers clinched the NL Central after the Chicago Cubs lost to the Atlanta Braves last night. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. Alex is excited to talk about this. How many NFL teams can reasonably win the Super Bowl this year, boys? I know we're only a few weeks into the season. However, we got to continue to update this list. Right now, as of today, how many teams can actually not just get to the postseason, but reasonably get to the
Can I just go by conference? Chiefs and Dolphins in the AFC. Only two teams that I have up there. Yeah. I just can never count out Mahomes and Kelsey. I really can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's more than two that can win the Super Bowl from the AFC.
I don't. I think Miami and Kansas City have proven they're the dominant forces, and then everyone else. Now, trade deadline could change things if they make some moves.
Kansas City can't even beat the Lions. Like, come on.
NFC, like, give me a minute, because I think there's like 5 teams that could actually win it.
In the Super Bowl?
Out of the NFC.
Out of the NFC?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Cowboys, Eagles, Niners, Lions.
You think Detroit can?
Yeah.
I like it. Their defense has been better than anybody expected this year.
Why am I blanking on this other team right now?
Because there's probably
Atlanta, New Orleans.
No, God, no. Neither of
Seattle?
those. No.
Rams.
Green
God,
Bay?
No. So maybe it was only 4 that I had. I could have sworn it was 5. So 4 in the NFC.
I've got 2 in the NFC. Dallas
Philly.
And Philly.
You don't think San Francisco?
The Niners
Brock
can
Purdy
win?
can't make enough plays when needed.
He hates Brock Purdy.
Purdy's been really good this year.
I'm not in on
Purdy's been
Brock
better
Purdy.
than half of the quarterbacks
What
in
do
the
you
NFC.
have against Brock Purdy?
He can't make the big open plays when they're there. He's missed a ton of throws down the field this season.
Dak Prescott has been worse, though, this year.
I trust Dak more than I trust Brock Purdy.
It's just
Brock Purdy's putting up numbers. He can't hit the deep throw.
It's just because they beat his Rams
so
team.
we've got those 2 in the NFC.
God, what a
Miami,
trash take.
Baltimore.
What a
the fact that you're
trash
going 2 teams out of the AFC, the best conference in football.
There's absolutely zero reason for me to believe that Baltimore could beat Miami to get to a Super Bowl.
Oh, I could totally see Baltimore beating
Baltimore's
Miami.
been doing nothing offensively.
They're hurt.
Oh, my God. What are you talking about?
I would say Miami, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and Kansas City are the 5 in the AFC.
Get the hell out of here.
Can, but
Yeah.
San Francisco can't.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Brock Purdy's not done enough for me to be a guy that's going to take you to a Super Bowl
If he
and win
stays
it.
healthy, they might have gone last year.
No. They're going to lose that
They
game
went
to
to the
Philly.
Super Bowl with Jimmy freaking Garoppolo.
Better quarterback.
You don't believe that.
I don't believe that. But I'm not sold on Brock Purdy.
I don't think you need to be. The rest of that team is so... Like, I'm not even doing a bit right now. I'm genuinely... I think that you can make an argument that the 49ers are the best team in the NFL right now.
No, I wouldn't listen to it.
And I don't think it's hard to do.
I think you're crazy if you think that.
What a terrible take, man.
Okay. I've got 8.
How many do I have?
Philly, Dallas, San Francisco, Detroit. We have the same teams in the NFC, Alex. I've got KC, Miami. I think we all agree there. Is that the 6 that we all agree on, other than T-Bone being crazy about a San Francisco idea?
Hey, Brandon. We got 5 we can agree on.
We agree on 5 of the 6, and T-Bone could be the outlier at San Francisco. Sure. Buffalo, Baltimore. Those are the other 2 that I've got in the AFC.
I'm not in on Baltimore. Baltimore's offense has not shown me that they can be dominant enough to beat Miami. And their defense is already banged up. What do you think they're going to do through the rest of the season?
I've got one other team that I want to throw up for consideration. Can Cleveland do it?
No. Next question.
That's one that T-Bone and I can agree on.
I'm being serious.
No, they can't do it. They don't have the quarterback to do it. Watson is not good enough to get them. They have a great defense.
Because they don't just have a good defense.
They've got a great defense.
The word you use is correct. They have a special defense. That defense has a chance to be excellent this year. They've allowed 32 points through the first 3 games of the season.
I'm trying to think who they remind me of, because there's been a couple of teams that it's like, man, that defense is so good. But then you look at the offense, it's just like, it can't do enough. But I don't think the offense is good enough. Without Chubb, with Chubb, maybe I could have heard the argument. Without him, they don't have a chance. They got to rely on Watson, and Watson just doesn't do it for me.
I don't have an issue with that. Yeah, Jacksonville's my team that I'm trying to figure out still. I can't decide if what we've seen over the first 3 weeks is just kind of like bad luck, because they have had some moments where, you know, a wide receiver gets 1 foot down and he's a half an inch out of the boundary and it doesn't count as a touchdown, and instead they end up kicking a field goal 2 plays later. Like, that stuff has been happening a lot with them. But losing 37-17 against Houston is something that I'm having a tough time getting over. Their next 2 weeks, they've got Atlanta and Buffalo. It's entirely possible they start the year 1-4. And if you start the year 1-4, it's hard for me to believe that you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, unless you've done it before. But, like, Cincinnati's the one team that I'm still kind of flirting with over here. There's some flirtation going on. I think it's kind of wild that none of us have them on our list.
Flirtation always leads to good things, man. So just keep up the flirting.
Do you think that Cincinnati can win the Super Bowl this year?
No, I don't. I think Cincinnati's going to be in a position where they're going to have to trade one of those wide receivers. It'll be T. Yeah, that's kind of who I assumed. But what I mean by that is they're going to be in a position where they don't view themselves as contenders, which I guess if you're Cincinnati, it's hard to.
I don't know how they could ever get to that
right,
spot.
but if you've got that and you know you're going to lose them for nothing and you think you could bring something worthwhile in, I think you take advantage of that.
It just comes down to Burrow's calf. Does that thing get healthy? Because it was clear, like,
he looks terrible right now.
He can't do enough. He can't move around, and I think he's having trouble getting, because he's not practicing, he's having trouble getting on sync with everybody. If his calf continues to be an issue throughout the season, no, they cannot win the Super Bowl.
All right, next thing up through NFL quick hitters. Did you guys see what Robert Saleh said the other day, the New York Jets head coach?
No, but we talk about guys who probably should be fired. Boy, he might be in that category.
I like Robert Saleh. I think he's a good coach, man. But he's been saddled with this Zach Wilson problem for a couple of years now, and he can't seem to get himself out of this mess. So he was lauding how Zach Wilson, quote, didn't turn the ball over, and he added that they were still in it until the end because they played a, quote, clean game on offense up until that point. Guys, the Jets cannot win anything meaningful with this guy as their quarterback. They signed Trevor Bleepin Siemian the other day to be his backup. Trevor Siemian is nobody's answer at the quarterback position. They've got to go out there and do something soon, right? You've got Kansas City this week on Sunday Night Football, and you're going to throw Zach Wilson out there? Dude, Casey, I understand. They in the past have not had a good defense. This is a really good defense in Kansas City this year. They're going to make him look silly. Next week, they're in Denver. All right, fine. Maybe you could find a way to win that one. But after that, it's Philly. And then you've got the bye week. That bye week is what I'm targeting right now. If they can get one more win in the next 3 weeks and get into that bye week, you got to make a trade. You have to trade for somebody at the quarterback position. You cannot keep running this thing back, man. It's embarrassing what they're doing right now.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the fact that the rumors are coming out now that the locker room is getting upset with how Robert Saleh has been handling the Zach Wilson situation in terms of his attitude. No, I can't. And if I'm the New York Jets and all of the hype that was around my team and the offseason that we had, and you brought in all of these weapons to help out Aaron Rodgers, this is a bleep show with Zach Wilson. And I expected to be competitive. And if you're not going to make the right moves, the proper moves to detour when you lose a quarterback that's supposed to take you elsewhere, and now you're like, oh, well, what can we do? We're stuck with Zach Wilson. No. What do we say all the time with Doug Armstrong? Who was it? Craig Button. It's your job as a general manager to make your team a competitor.
I've mentioned that before, and it gets thrown back in my face. But whatever.
But you use it in bad context. I use it in better context here. Like, go out there and find a quarterback. I don't care that this never happens, that other teams don't trade quarterbacks. They will if you offer up the right deal.
You know what ended up working out one time? Sam Bradford getting traded for a first-round draft pick from the Philadelphia Eagles. The Minnesota Vikings were desperate. Their quarterback, I think it was Teddy Bridgewater at the time, went down with a serious injury. He was going to be missing for the entirety of the season. That was right before the year started. Listen, should they have traded a first-round pick for Bradford? No, probably not. But the point is that they found a way to make it work. They found a way to go get the guy that they knew, hey, this guy isn't technically available right now. I think Carson Wentz was the Philly quarterback at that point. They were going to wait to start Carson Wentz, but they got a first-round pick in return for Bradford. They said, hey, we got to do it. That's the kind of thing that the Jets need to do. Not a first-round pick, but call up the Vikings 3 weeks from now. If they're going to be, at that point in time, 1-5. Say, hey, what does it need to be? Does it need to be a second? Do we need to give you a second-round pick for Kirk Cousins, who's on an expiring deal? And if so, get it done. Call up the Chicago Bears.
Absolutely.
Say, hey, we got a third-round pick. It's not working with Justin Fields there. Your season is an abomination, and this is going nowhere fast. Justin Fields is broken. We'll give you a 3rd-round pick for him because that is how desperate we are right now. Hey, Jacoby Brissett, you're with Washington. You're backup quarterback there. Can we give you a 4th-round pick for him, a conditional? If he starts the next 10 games for us, you get a 3rd-round pick out of this. That's the kind of thing the Jets have to do. They've got to go out there and be aggressive. Otherwise, this season is going to be a throwaway. And, dude, the problem is then you lose your locker room. Now Robert Saleh goes into next season and his messaging is completely torn to shreds because you were the guy that made us try to believe in Zach Wilson. That guy never had a chance to be a capable NFL starting quarterback.
I mean, I'd be calling Tennessee too and saying like, "Hey, give me Tannehill."
Yeah.
I mean, you can get any deal you want as long as you offer up the right deal. And frankly, if you're in win now mode, which is what you did for Aaron Rodgers, you might as well start selling off pieces and start winning.
Call New Orleans whenever Derek Carr comes back, and go get yourself a guy that is not ideal at all. But Winston's fine. He can start games capably for you.
Go get the red rifle when Bryce Young's back.
No, don't
go
do
get
that.
Taysom Hill. Like, go get somebody. Go get somebody.
Taylor
That's
Heineke.
really what this comes down to.
Cacaw.
Go get Josh Dobbs whenever.
Kyler's back.
Whenever
Seriously.
Hell, just go get Kyler.
Yeah, go get Kyler. Arizona might be cool with Dobbs.
Honestly, call Carson Wentz. He's
Whoa,
terrible.
whoa,
He's
okay.
bad.
Okay.
He's better than Zach Wilson is.
Zach Wilson's a great locker room guy.
Yeah.
You get
He's
the point.
not. He's
Go
not.
out there and make an aggressive move to go
All
get
in
your
until
quarterback.
What's Sam Darnold doing?
He's the backup in San Francisco.
Yeah. Gonna have that job soon.
You want a starter's job, Sammy D?
Honestly, I would call Carolina whenever Bryce Young's back and be like, hey, we want Andy Dalton. All of these guys are better options than what they have currently. By the way, Andy Dalton being better than Bryce Young is concerning. He was legitimately better in that game
Said
for
it all
Carolina.
along, guys. C.J. Stroud was the real deal, not Bryce Young.
It's fine. Okay.
What's C.J. Stroud do over the weekend?
I think I'm, at the risk of sounding alarmist, I think I'm out on Bryce Young.
I've been out since the draft. Stroud and Richardson are better than Young.
I would be genuinely concerned if I was a Panthers fan.
That's who they should get, Gardner Minshew.
Thor? I'll take a little Thor action out in
Put him in New York.
New York.
That'd be fun. Get
Hey.
Mike White. Call up Miami. Okay.
Magic
That
Mike.
guy worked out well for us last
Should
year.
have just kept him.
No
You're not
kidding.
wrong.
What's Mark Sanchez doing?
What's Joe Flacco?
He's on
doing?
games.
The butt fumble has gone away by now, right?
Yeah, time.
Okay.
Call up Tony Romo. Philip Rivers? Can they call Phil?
Absolutely.
He's
I'm in.
definitely getting sick of the
I am
27
going to
kids at
take
home.
care of your 17 kids for the rest of this year.
If you could name one quarterback that you actually want to see in New York, who would it be?
Justin Fields. I want to see him with legit offense. That would be the team that I'd like.
I want to see Jacoby Brissett there. I think Jacoby Brissett could get that team to like 8-9 wins.
I just think you got a better offensive coordinator and, frankly, a better led team than Chicago. So put Justin Fields in a better spot.
I want to see him in Atlanta.
I'd
That's
like
the
that
team
too.
that I want to see.
Fantasy
give them
football
a call.
purposes, I'd like that too.
I think I would go with either Brissett or, if they were willing to pay up the capital, Cousins.
Cousins is a fun one.
Cousins would be fun in New York.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 143999646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in on the text line. Right now, you guys can throw some questions in on the YouTube chat as well. We are at 101 ESPN STL on YouTube. This one comes from the 314. Guys, when you talk about the Blues, I keep getting the feeling it'll be another one of those years where the Blues get a lot of shots on goal, but not many actual goals. I can't explain it. Do you think that they will have a good offense this year?
Well, if you watched last night, then you know that the shots on goal might be a little concerning.
3 in 2 periods.
Four.
Bad. Oh, 2 a period.
I do think they're going to have a good offense. Craig Berube said it last night that, look, he values quality over quantity. He's not a Pete DeBoer who just puts the puck on net every single opportunity you get. But he said, we've got more guys that are willing to go to the front of the net now. We've got to make sure more pucks get to that net. So he wants more shots from the blue line. I don't think this team's going to be like top 5 in shots on goal. But what I do think this team will be is the top half of the league in terms of goals scored, because they have the potential to have what they had a couple of years ago in terms of 7 to 9 20-goal scores.
They need to be more quantity over quality, unlike the last 2 years where they've tried more quality over quantity. I think the offense is going to be good, but will it be good enough? That would be my question, and I don't think it will be. That's my concern, because I think they can have a good offense. It'll be better than last yeir's, but I think they're just going to they have to be a great offense from what I see if they're going to be able to outplay their defensive issues, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line from the 314. Guys, how do you think what we've seen so far from Luther Burden compares to what we saw from Jeremy Macklin years ago? I think that's the comparison. Like, if you're going for Mizzou history, it's J-Mac. That's the closest thing that I've seen to it. They go about it a little differently. I think Burden is more physical. Macklin played with more speed on the field. But in terms of just the dynamic ability to make guys miss, to get into open space and then take a 7-yard gain and make it a 70-yard touchdown, that's the only thing that I can remember that was similar to this. I would say the closest comparison, though, is the one that I've heard Eli Drinkwitz make, which is Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
That's who he reminds me of the most, because Deebo is a guy that you can use him as like a running back, wide receiver combo, and that's kind of what Luther Burden is at his best.
Yeah, I think with both Macklin and Luther, it's the explosiveness. I mean, in one split second, we're talking about the guy picking up 80 yards and a touchdown. And what I love about Burden that I don't remember as much with Macklin, you'd be able to speak it more to me, is you can use Burden in so many different ways. I mean, you use him as a running back, you use him as a jet sweep wide receiver, and then you use him as a deep threat. And that's the explosiveness we're talking about.
I think that sounds about right. I didn't remember much. I don't remember any of Macklin at Mizzou.
I was gonna say, you were like, what, 3?
Well, I'm just looking up. He's there 7 and 8. I would have been 7 and 8 years old. I don't remember much about college football.
You don't
back
remember
then.
a lot about 7 and 8?
No.
He did some terrible things to your Illini. I will just put it that way.
Glad I didn't see it.
His
hasn't this
debut
year, am I
against
right?
Illinois was incredible. It was quite the show.
I remember Tebow. Was that around Tebow's time? Tebow, Colt McCoy.
2007 was Tim Tebow.
Tebow.
I remember that. That's about all I remember from college football then.
2007 was a fun season for our Missouri
Great
Tigers.
year, too, you know?
It's a great college football season.
17 years old in the prime of my career.
Great college football season. That's the one that everybody points to when they're talking about like what this year can be. It's 07, because it felt like every week the new number 1 would get knocked off, and by the end of the season it was Mizzou and Kansas.
This year doesn't feel like it has the star power.
Playing against each other at Arrowhead Stadium.
We'll
in
never
Kansas
see
City.
that again.
This year doesn't feel like it has the star power that 2007 did, though.
I don't know,
so
man.
much star power.
I think there is as much star power as I can remember in college football in a long time.
Look at all the quarterbacks there are now.
And Dion. Dion changes the calculus of this as well.
Yeah, and you got a two-way player, too, in Hunter. Now, I know he's out now, but when he was playing. But, yeah, think you've got Sanders, you got Sanders' kid, you've got Bo Nix, you've got Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman last year, like not even in the conversation right now for the Heisman.
USC has the best player in the country, and they are the secondary story in their game that they're going to be playing this week at CU. Think about that for a second. Caleb Williams, the almost locked-in number 1 quarterback, number 1 pick next year in the draft, a guy that won the Heisman last year, absolutely could win it again this season, depending on how things go the rest of the way. He is the second most famous player that will be at that game.
I'll shut up.
Thank you.
LSU versus Ole Miss this weekend.
All right, calm down.
We got Notre Dame versus Duke.
That's
Sneaky
fun.
good matchup this
That's
weekend.
like Mizzou, Kansas back when they were 1-2, you know?
Yeah, sneaky good one. Sneaky good one. All right, coming up next. Brad Thompson said something yesterday that got my attention. T-Bone and Alex have not heard this audio yet.
So if my reaction sucks, I'm sorry.
We will get their reaction live to Brad Thompson talking about Willson Contreras' future as a catcher here in St. Louis. That's coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So yesterday I was tuning into the Fast Lane as I do each and every day from 2 to 6 o'clock right here on 101 ESPN. You can also check it out on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. And Alex, yesterday, for the first hour, they were joined by our friend, Bally Sports Midwest color analyst, Brad Thompson. And they got into the conversation about Willson Contreras. And I figured when they teased the segment, okay, well, probably going to talk about how it was a successful season. Look at all of this offense that he was able to provide and look at how much better he got defensively behind the plate. That is not the direction that this segment went. Here's what Brad Thompson had to say about Willson Contreras' future with the Cardinals and why it might not be at catcher.
I think that they're going to have those conversations with Willson again after the season of, hey, would you be willing to play a corner and DH? And I would say potentially even bring in another catcher, bring in a free agent, and then have either Kisner or Herrera back him up potentially. Again, spitballing, but I think that that's kind of how they would want it to look, because look at you eyeball test. He's not great back there. And will he continue to work on it? Yes. Will he get better? Sure. But will it get to the point where he is like a plus catcher? I don't know. I don't know if he has that in the skill set. But it comes down to, if they do have that conversation again, I don't have knowledge that they are going to, but they made it seem like they would revisit this in the offseason. It comes down to his willingness to play somewhere else and let that bat play, because the bat is a game changer.
So let's continue. One other thing that he said, there was a follow-up question. I think it was a good one by Jamie Rivers. Can him being a DH and an outfielder, can you justify the money that you spent on him if that ends up being the position that he plays? Here's Brad.
His bat justifies the signing, I think.
You think?
If he is willing to play a corner for you in DH and then catch maybe sometimes,
yeah.
I still think that a 5-year, $87 million deal, that's fine. Like, he's a 20-plus home run guy. He'll drive in some runs. He'll bring some intensity. Like, I think the signing itself would be justified if that happened.
I am legitimately surprised this is a conversation. And this is, I promise you, zero disrespect to Brad Thompson, because I think he is telling you what the organization is thinking as much as anything else. That's just me reading between the lines there. Alex, if they are genuinely considering approaching Willson Contreras this offseason about a position change, because that's what this would be. This is you're an outfielder now who happens to play DH occasionally. You are basically Jordan Walker. You're playing the same type of role as Jordan Walker does for this team. Left field every day, and when you're not in left field, you're going to be our DH. Personally, my own opinion on the matter, this would be a disastrous decision by the St. Louis Cardinals. And the reason why I believe that, first of all, he would be a below-average defensive outfielder for this team. So while maybe not as valuable defensively as a catcher, you already have a guy in right field that is a below-average right fielder right now. I think he can be average. I think he could even be above average with what we've seen lately from Jordan Walker, but he's certainly not there yet, and it's going to take some time. Lars Nootbaar in center field, if that's his everyday position, is average at best. I think he's a pretty solid defender in left. I think he's an average center field defender. If you're then putting together an outfield that includes those three guys, man, we're running it back in terms of what we saw at the beginning of this year with poor defensive play in the outfield yet again. The other issue that stems from this is he's going to need quite a few days at DH if he's going to be playing in the outfield for you. Now, that clogs up that DH spot, which is a similar issue to what they had going into this season. Third issue that you have, man, you are already crowded in the outfield, and now we're going to throw one more DH corner outfielder type into this mix? Whoo, buddy. I think this would be a really bad decision by the Cardinals. Now, if they think it's just too bad with him behind the plate to continue to do this moving forward, they've got to make hard decisions, and maybe this is one of them that they think makes them ultimately a better team. But I would disagree with it. I would not go this direction. I think Willson Contreras should be your primary catcher going into next season. Alex, when you hear that from BT yesterday on the Fast Lane, your reaction was what?
I hate it. I wish this narrative would die. And look, BT is absolutely coming from a knowledgeable understanding, and that's the part that bothers me the most. Like, this is something the Cardinals are probably going to do. Why? How does this benefit you next season to use Willson Contreras as a DH or as an outfielder? We're acting like Willson Contreras is bad defensively behind the plate. And look, there have been times he's been bad. There's been other times. Fine, but there have been other times that he's been good enough for you. We're going to sit here and act like he's going to make your defense better to be in the outfield as a corner outfielder? That's not going to happen.
I think the hope, again, I disagree with this. I want to say that on the front end, but the hope and belief would be if you get in a Tucker Barnhart type, I don't even know who they would go out there and acquire, but if you go out there and get a legit starting catcher who's good defensively and is a good game caller, it can help your pitching play up. I think this year your issue with your pitching was the lack of talent.
Yeah.
I don't think that Willson Contreras won a bleeping World Series behind the plate, man. The Cubs made it work with him behind the plate, and that was before he was an experienced player back there. So I don't think this is the thing that was holding you back. I think we have now learned, hey, Jack Flaherty was just never going to work out. It didn't work out with an all-star catcher with him right now in Baltimore, and he's now in the bullpen as a result. Jordan Montgomery was good here, and he's good down in Texas. The guys that are good pitchers, they will find a way to succeed despite or regardless of who is calling the game from behind the plate.
And I don't understand why we're acting like all season long, every time Willson Contreras is behind the plate, the pitcher's only going 3 innings and he's given up 7 runs. Like, Willson Contreras has been behind the plate for some pretty good games as well. So I don't like this narrative. And now the fact that you're going to go into free agency and spend money, valuable money that should be going towards pitching, you're going to go spend it on another catcher where you have Andrew Kisner, and T-Bone and I are on the page that Ivan Herrera is going to be trade bait, when you've got somebody who will be fine for you. Like, do we really want to pretend that Tucker Barnhart is going to improve this pitching staff that significantly if you get him? So I hate this narrative, and I think what this is going to become is Willson Contreras is going to become a DH, and if I'm Willson, I'm pissed. I mean, you signed me to be the catcher. Give me an opportunity to be the catcher. Don't let a half of a season where my teammates were throwing me under the bus for not being able to catch well when I caught fine towards the end of the season, and now you're just going to tell me I'm an outfielder. No, this is ridiculous. And frankly, if I'm Willson, I'm probably looking at this saying, where else can I go? Can you trade me somewhere?
Yeah, I think it would be a mistake, too, to do this. Now, I do agree with the notion that could they be better off with a defensive-minded catcher that calls the game probably better? Yes, but with that being said, I think your point of then you have to spend more valuable money that this team needs to use as many resources to go out and get true starters, 3 starters and bullpen arms. Like, they don't have enough room to go out there and do that and bring in another catcher and convert this deal into something else. Like, I guess you could make the argument that his deal would play fine if he were a DH and the bat makes up for anything less defensively. But I would just put that behind home plate.
By the way, would be outfield. Like, if you're going down this path, you have to play him regularly.
Playing left field like Kyle Schwarber did with the Cubs, and how'd that go?
The thing I don't understand about that idea by the Cardinals would be, what was the whole issue that they felt was a major problem besides the catching defense? It was the outfield defense this year. And by putting him in left, I think Walker will be above average next year. I agree, Nootbaar's probably average in center, but now you're below average in left. Like, you didn't do much in terms of improving defensively in the outfield. I think your outfield best next year is Nootbaar's in left and Edmonds in center. And I don't like Edmonds in center because of his arm, but at least he can get underneath the ball and make plays. So I don't understand that whole idea, and I don't think they would be willing to just jam the DH spot completely with Willson Contreras.
It feels like they're chasing their tail in terms of, we got to go get another Yadier Molina who can lift this pitching staff up. Nobody available in the Major League Baseball is going to do this. Like, sure, you're going to get a guy who might be able to come in and frame pitches a little bit better. Sure, you're going to get a guy who's not going to let the wild pitches go crazy, but it's not like Yadier Molina sitting out there as a free agent. Like,
this is the problem. Like, I'll go ahead and read you the top catching options that are available on the market, guys. It's ugly. It's Gary Sanchez, who's a terrible defensive catcher. Mitch Garver, who is a below-average defensive catcher. Martin Maldonado, who has been so bad this year behind at the plate in terms of his hitting that Astros fans want him replaced desperately. And their manager keeps putting him out there because he's really good defensively. Yan Gomes, who I think the Cubs are going to pick up that $6 million option. Why not? It's not a ton of money, and he's been really solid for them this year. That's kind of it. Like, Austin Hedges is available. Yasmani Grandal, who's bad defensively. Victor Caratini. Like, there's not good defensive catchers available.
Maldonado would be the closest one that you could get. That would be Molina-esque. So you're handles a pitching staff well.
He is embarrassingly bad.
So you're going to put a dude in your batting order who's going to hit 175 for you because he's good defensively. I mean, the team ERA in 2016 for the Cubs was 3.15. Seemed to handle those pitchers fine. I don't understand this, how a half of a season of Willson Contreras, when all of the narrative was throwing him under the bus, turns into, well, let's move on from him and make it an outfielder next year and bring in a new catcher. Why not give him the offseason to work with the pitching staff that you put together to see if he can do it?
If this is true, the thought process they're having, this tells you that he did not improve in terms of preparation and game calling. That would be the only thing that would say.
So then help him improve in the offseason.
But I don't know if you can. Like, that is a Contreras thing. That is Contreras showing up to the ballpark and doing his homework and getting set. Like the article that was written by, I think it was Derek Gould, over the weekend or earlier this week about Herrera and Kisner writing stuff down in a notebook, sitting down with Dakota Hudson, preparing for that start. If this is what the Cardinals are truly going with the notion of, we got to go out and get a defensive-minded catcher, it's because Contreras never improved in terms of his preparation, and that's on Contreras, and that is replaceable.
Yeah.
That is when you get to the conversation of you've got to replace him behind home plate.
But what you just said, and somebody texted in on our Air Comfort Service text line, you guys are all wrong. The Cardinals have to be the most attractive to get their top pitcher. A dominant versus average defensive catcher is the point. Who's the dominant catcher available of the names that BK just listed?
I think
not. You'd have to trade for one.
Yeah, they would either have to trade for one, or they would go with the approach of, I would assume, bringing in Maldonado because he would have preparation. Now, the problem with doing that is then you have two very below average bats in Wynn and Maldonado at the bottom of your order.
And now you've taken away from what was previously your strength. The other thing is now you're going to have to trade away outfielders, like more of them, because this becomes a roster crunch issue as well. If you're going to have Contreras as a DH/outfield type, now you got to make some other difficult decisions. Like maybe this is just as simple as they're going to go into next season and they've already made their choices on who they don't want to be around any longer. Maybe Nolan Gorman's going to be involved in a deal this offseason, and that puts Mason, or they're going to have Mason Wynn at shortstop, they're going to have Tommy Edman at second base, and they just want to work things out that way. My question then would be, okay, what's your plan with Donovan? Like, this has a trickle-down effect on Brendan Donovan. Maybe Brendan Donovan's involved in one of these trades that we're not talking.
Could he play catcher?
Probably. I think he's the emergency guy.
I mean, he's going to have the Winter Soldier arm.
Like, if you're going to have somebody that's consistently getting these at-bats at the DH/outfield, it has a serious trickle-down effect. So in order to get Willson Contreras away from the plate and into these other positions, it necessitates putting somebody really bad offensively behind the plate. That makes your lineup worse. It necessitates taking one of those other guys that's really good out of your lineup on a day-to-day basis because you have to find a position for Willson Contreras to be in there. Like, it's just, the Cardinals knew what they were signing. They did. And if they did it, that's on them. That is not a Willson Contreras problem. That is on them. Willson Contreras was always a below-average defensive catcher. He was always a guy that there were questions about whether or not he was good working with the pitching staff. And this was all talked about last year at the trade deadline. So if the Cardinals didn't know about this and we did, dude, that is a really bad look. So I'm going to give them the credit that they deserve. They knew. And they thought we could fix him. And the truth of the matter is the Cardinals have had way too much confidence in being able to fix people. They had way too much confidence that they could fix this pitching staff into becoming we're going to strike out the world type of a rotation. No, you can't. Guys either have good stuff or they don't. You can get a little bit better. You can have a little bit of an uptick in velocity. That stuff does happen. But in general, man, you are who you are as a pitcher. When you're 25, 30 years old, you're not suddenly going to become a guy that's striking out the world. It doesn't happen. Point me to one guy where it's taken place. Maybe you can, but it's an outlier. You're not going to suddenly become a good defensive catcher. You're not. So they knew what they signed with Willson Contreras, and now they have buyer's remorse. Sorry, guys. That's what you're stuck with. You have bought into the notion that you are going to have an offensive catcher behind the plate. And now you got to live with it. You got to live with everything that comes with that.
Buyer's remorse for a guy who legitimately has been your best bat for 90% of the season.
And he, I think, met every possible expectation this year of what you signed him to be.
It's just a joke.
Now, if you signed him to be something that he's not, that is on the front office, not on the player. The player is exactly who they signed him to be. He's intense, he hits the crap out of the baseball, and he's a below-average defender behind the plate. All of those things are exactly what the scouting report suggested that he was going to be. So I would not do this. I think this would be a serious mistake for the Cardinals. But hearing Brad Thompson say that it's something that is at least under consideration for the organization, I think that you have to give some weight to that. Because BT doesn't just talk out of his butt. This is something that he's saying this because it is informed speculation. I'm pretty confident in suggesting that.
And I agree it would be a mistake unless it is the preparation thing. If it is the preparation thing, then it is the best case scenario for the Cardinals to go down that trickle-down effect and find someone behind the plate that can do it. And maybe that is just sticking with Kisner and carrying Herrera as well. But I think if the preparation is the reason that this is a conversation, and that is the only thing that I can point to, because though he is bad defensively, the bat makes up for it. The bat cannot make up for the lack of preparation. And that would be the reason that if they're going to do this, that would be why I would be willing to do it.
And I would say if that is the issue, you should have known about it in the offseason.
I 100% agree with that.
And you messed up.
I agree with that.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us two scenarios, we'll tell you which one's more likely to happen here on 101 ESPN. Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. Let's start with this, guys. More likely to happen. The Cardinals win the NL Central next year, or the Blues make it to the postseason this year? Cardinals win the division next year. Blues make it to the postseason.
Have we
this year.
upgraded at catcher or no?
Yeah, we're going to win after Gary Sanchez because we need to be elite defensively behind the plate.
That wouldn't be him.
Let's go get Martin Maldonado and his 165 batting average for our team this year. But hell, he knows how to frame those pitches.
No, it's game management.
It pisses me off. I'll stick with what I believe. I believe the Blues will be a playoff team. I view this as the Blues are on the cusp of getting into that bottom playoff spot, so I'll say that's more likely to happen than the Cardinals winning the NL Central. I have to wait to see what they do off-season wise for me to sit here and act like they're going to be good.
I would say more likely Cardinals win the Central. I don't think the Blues are a playoff team. Their 3 shots on goal last night in 2 periods kind of reiterates that they probably could have some of the same issues they had last year.
Okay, if you're going to use the argument when I go positive, I'll use a negative. It was a preseason game.
Yeah, okay. Says the guy I should be buying into pretty much playing with Parayko after 1 preseason game. I don't think
better with Parayko.
I have too many questions about the Blues. There's a lot that has to go right, I think, for them to get into the playoffs. I think the Cardinals, when I look at the NL Central going into next year,
with Contreras being an outfielder.
I'm not cool with it, but I could understand how they get to that point.
T-Bone's been consistent in that.
Yeah, I think when I look at the NL Central going into next year, I think Milwaukee's taking a step back. I don't think the Reds will spend like they need to with that young core. Cubs are the team that I'd be a little bit fearful of, and the Pirates stink still. So I can see where the Cardinals, they sign 2-3 starters, added the bullpen, apparently add a catcher. They could be a team that can win the NL Central again.
Yeah, I'm with T-Bone. I think that it's more likely that the Cardinals end up winning the division next year.
Homers.
And that's no like high bar to clear. I think both of these would be homer picks. I think that this suggests that the Central is going to be bad again next year. I think the Brewers are taking a step back. I think that we're going to see their manager either step away for a year or just flat out take the Mets job. I think one of those 2 things is going to happen. And I think he's a big piece of why that team has had their success over the last 5 years or so. I think they're going to probably trade one of their top 2 starters going into this offseason. And maybe they end up winning a deal. And they do what they have been doing previously, which is get Willson Contreras for nothing. But I think it's more likely that the Cardinals end up winning the division because I am buying into the notion that they will be aggressive this offseason. Alex, what do you got?
More likely to happen, boys. I'm going to bring up a trade conversation for hockey season. How about that?
I thought you were going to throw out a Contreras trade or something.
No, we're not going to do that one. More likely to happen. The Blues mid-season trade away Zachary Bolduc or trade away Joel Hofer.
Because you're buying in on the Subban?
Dude, it's fun watching people go, Sub! in the arena. It's not so much Subban as it. I mean, Subban looks great, but it's also this Vadim Zarenko kid.
They brought in Subban for him.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a veteran presence with him.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a 50-50 split. So,
well, it's going to be a 50-50 split up here in the NHL whenever Subban is the starting quarterback? Goaltender.
Are they swinking? Are they swinking or singing? Are they swinking or simming?
I think that it's more likely they trade Bolduc. We've talked about all of the issues that are there. It just sounds so similar to the frustrations that they've had with Jordan Kyrou. I'm not sure they want to do that again.
I agree. I think it's more likely it would be Bolduc. I think they hope that Hofer can be the backup for at least a year or 2 before Zarenko's ready. I also, you mentioned Kyrou. It reminds me so much of the Klim Kostin situation with Bolduc, to where it's like, we want him to be this, we want him to be this. And it's like, he's always been known as a goal scorer. I don't know if you can change that guy.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like the Blues are trying to do with Bolduc. And what did they do with Kostin? Eventually they just gave up, and I think they gave him to Edmonton for like some hockey pucks and some poutine.
I don't think that you're allowed to say the first word that you said on the air, so we should just continue here.
Should we hit the dump button on that one? I'm going to say it's Bolduc. The idea of Hofer's really intriguing, especially if Zarenko plays well in the minors. And obviously, what does everybody want?
Do you think T-Bone knows what he just said?
No, I don't think so. I'm moving on because I didn't know if we wanted to address it. I could sit on that one all night if you'd like, because that was worse than him saying, I'll be the first to touch it. Like, that was great. We'll let him figure it out afterwards, what he actually said on the rear.
We'll go back and look at the video.
I mean, Bennington's the guy. And if you feel like Zarenko has proved himself, I do wonder if you look at it and say, I wonder what we could get for this in terms of fixing certain areas that need. And Zorenko could be the guy that plays backup and then takes over when Binnington's gone.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. T-Bone, I'm going to let you get to yours here in just a minute, but I feel like you need to be put in timeout for a moment.
I disagree. I 100% agree.
More likely to happen. Purdy makes the Pro Bowl this year or the Rams make the playoffs?
Oh, well, it'd be him making the Pro Bowl. Everybody makes the damn Pro Bowl. Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowler last year.
He just won't be able to play in the Pro Bowl because being
no
the Super Bowl.
standards for the Pro Bowl.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you there, but the Rams making the playoffs is a joke.
They're a good football team.
Did you see that boring game on Monday night?
Sean McVay got away from running the football. You know, he'll learn. He'll learn.
I don't know who he's going to have run the football.
Kyrie
The answer
Williams.
is very clearly Purdy making the Pro Bowl.
Absolutely.
And he might be justified in making the Pro Bowl this year. His numbers are really good, man. You're a hater.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Everybody
T-Bone.
makes a Pro Bowl. More likely to be a Cardinal at the start of 2024. Blake Snell or Lucas Giolito? Or excuse me, not Giolito. Dylan Cease. I'm struggling.
I just can't with these texts coming in right now.
I'm just going to turn my mic off, okay?
The text that just came in got me so well.
The new nickname for him?
Yeah.
I don't have the text line open, so I'm glad.
I wouldn't open it. What did you
You
ask?
won't know what it means.
More likely to be a Cardinal at the start of 2024. Blake Snell or Dylan Cease?
Blake Snell.
Yeah, it's not going to be Dylan Cease.
I threw Cease's name in there because if Contreras is in left, we've got pieces to trade.
If Contreras is left, you might be trading Contreras because he's not going to play
hilarious
left.
when next year they have like the best. They're going to be the best
defense,
rotation in baseball with an offense that can't hit.
Or a defense that completes or makes errors left and right.
Yeah, they're going to go so far in on the swing and miss stuff this offseason. They're going to be like, oh, our defense doesn't matter. We're going to have Lars Nootbaar in center, Jordan Walker in right, Nolan Gorman at second, Willson Contreras in left, and Alec Burleson at first base.
Ooh, wait, what'd you do with Goldie?
Yeah, you heard me.
Whoa.
He go.
We traded Goldie for a
on.
pitcher.
He's on Gilbert.
He's on the Mariners
Gilbert.
now.
Yeah, I'm going to say Blake Snell here. There's no way Dylan Cease is here. And then our outfield is going to be giving up like the most errors we've ever seen in Major League Baseball history.
I don't think I would make the necessary trade that it would take for the Cardinals to make the White Sox interested. I don't think I'm interested in making that deal from the Cardinals' perspective. So I think they just have to give up too much. Like, I don't want to give up Nolan Gorman for
Contreras in
Dylan
the
Cease.
outfield?
I'm not doing that.
Well, they might be.
I'd like to manage against you.
I think it would be Blake Snell, too. Plus, you need a ton of swing and miss. You're going to have Contreras in left. What's just going on with the text line?
You big fan of pie, T-Bone? Huh?
What kind? I do like pumpkin pie.
Well, no.
Well, it's not that one. It's another P one.
All right. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Alex is 12. I am as well. Coming up
12.
next, Jakub Vrana has the potential to completely change the outlook for the Blues this season. So much so that he could be their 40-goal scorer that they've been lacking. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. We got to tell you about our friends over at Apache Village RV Center. Alex, it's an easy drive. You just go out there. It is in Hazelwood, super easy to find. And if you are interested in getting yourself into the RV lifestyle, this is the place to go. They're not going to be pushy. Sometimes you go to those sales lots and you're looking for a car, you're looking for an RV. They're going to push you into something that you weren't looking for. That is not the way that it works out at Apache Village RV Center. They're going to get you exactly what you're looking for. And Alex, this is something that they are known for as well. They have the largest selection of Jayco 2024s in the United States. So give them a call or go out and see them today at Apache Village RV Center.
When you walk on that 8-acre lot in Hazelwood, you're going to see everything we're talking about. And the best part for me is they treat you like family members. Look, this is a third-generation Meyer family business that have been working in this industry for 40 years. And when you become a part of the Apache Village RV family, they take care of their customers first, no matter where you need help with their RV service. So give them a call, head on out there, tell them BK and Ferrario sent you, and you can go one better with your traveling needs. Go Apache Village RV Center.
Taylor Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Milwaukee Brewers last night 4-1. They'll be back in action tonight. 6:40 will be first pitch as Zach Thompson gets the start for St. Louis, and Wade Miley will be on the mound for Milwaukee. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Right off the face-off, the Blues get the puck, shoot, and score. Vrana found it and backhanded it in. 1-0 Blues.
That's what it sounded like last night right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Jakub Vrana getting off to a hot start for the St. Louis Blues. Alex, I think he is the single player that has the best chance to change the ceiling for the St. Louis Blues in 2023. We all know what Jordan Kyrou has the potential to do. He nearly got to 40 goals last season, and what was considered to be a weird year, down year for him overall, offensively still was able to put up that point production that you were looking for. Jeremy Rutherford pointed this out yesterday on Twitter. In the preseason and the regular season, obviously we're comparing apples to oranges, but since arriving in St. Louis from Detroit, Vrana has 11 goals and 16 points in his 22 games. That is roughly the equivalent of getting to 40 goals over the course of a full NHL season. And that's in line with what his production has been, Alex, in the regular season over the last few years. In his last 100 games, he has 43 goals overall. Again, not quite that 40-goal peak, but that would pace out to be like 34, 35 over the course of a regular season. He has a real chance to be that guy, especially if he gets more ice time here in St. Louis than he did previously. Alex, last year, the NHL featured 19 players that scored at least 40 goals. The only teams that had multiple guys on that list were Edmonton, New Jersey, Florida, and Toronto. All of those teams are considered to be quite good, I think it is fair to say. Do you think that it is reasonable to believe that the Blues could have 2 40-goal scorers on their roster this season?
I do. And I think Jakub Vrana should be viewed in that light. And I understand the skepticism with Jakub Vrana, especially when you just kind of look at what he has dealt with in the past and the inconsistency. But here's the deal. I always go back to when I talked with the Detroit Red Wings beat writer when they acquired him. And he told me all of us in Detroit, when he was acquired, assumed he was going to be a 40-goal scorer every season. Now, it did not pan out, but Jakub Vrana is a goal scorer. Here's the other piece. Even strength-wise, from 2018 up until the 2020-2021 season, here are the top 5 goal scorers at even strength in the NHL. In that, 3-year span?
4, yeah.
Matthews, Ovechkin, McDavid, Kyle Connor, Jakub Vrana.
Damn.
That's even strength goals. He scored 43 in 119 games.
Yeah, this is not a guy that prior to last season was a significant contributor on the power play. I mean, his first 4 years in the NHL combined, he had a total of 6 power play goals. 4 years combined.
And look at the way that he was utilized. Washington, all of his time in Washington, 2018 and 2019, both years, he was like a third-line winger for them. And he scored 24 and 25 goals and was on the second power play unit. He goes to Detroit that first year that he was acquired, scores 8 goals in 11 games, season ends. The next season, before he kind of leaves the team, scores 13 goals in 26 games. And again, he's like second-line player for them. Now imagine what you're going to be getting when you're going to get top 6 minutes and also potentially get on the number 1 power play unit. So, yeah, I don't think you're outlandish to say that you could have 2 40-goal scorers because Vrana has showcased that ability.
He could be your Brad Boyce type of a season.
Absolutely.
Where, like, comes out of nowhere, whoa, that dude had 40 goals, and then he's gone. Like, that is entirely possible that this season he has this crazy good season. It works out perfectly for the Blues, and then he goes and gets a $6 million per year AAV salary elsewhere. Yeah. Like, that is very much in play. But you look at the Blues' last 20 years, Alex, they've had 2 40-goal scorers. Vladimir Tarasenko and Brad Boyce. That's it. In the last 20 years of this Blues history, they've not had guys reach that kind of a pinnacle. You have 2 players on your roster right now that have the potential to be that. And if this team is going to reach its ceiling, it will necessitate multiple players outperforming expectations offensively, I believe.
Yeah.
I know what the defense is. I know what their questions are back there. I know what the questions are with the forwards defensively, honest. I'm not totally convinced that they upgraded this forward group defensively as much as people are suggesting. I think Kevin Hayes is really solid. I think he's a better offensive player, though, than defensive player. I think Jakub Vrana is a potentially special offensive player. I think Kasperi Kapanen was a little overrated defensively last year, but he's solid. All-around solid game for the Blues. What you could have offensively this year is, I think, what can really propel you in a way that we did not see from a year ago. Last year, early on in this season, that offense looked congested, man. We were talking about, hey, how do you get Ryan O'Reilly going? What do you do to get Jordan Kyrou going? Because they were trying to have them on the same line, neither of whom really seemed to fit with the other. And then it was like Shin was kind of off into the distance. They just didn't really click. You got to get that offense going early and often this time around.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. Berube, after the game last night, he talked about how talented of a player Vrana was, but he also used the comments that I think is a call out to all of his players. He said, you're going to have to find ways to score more than just being on the outside with your shot. And Vrana showcased that. You win the faceoff, he takes the puck, avoids a check, and then dekes the goaltender to go top shelf. And Berube wants his team to go to the front of the net. We're seeing it from certain guys. I mean, Sundqvist and Brandon Saad and Toropchenko. These guys are doing what Craig Berube is asking. If you're going to be Jakub Vrana, if you're going to be Jordan Kyrou, if you're going to be Bolduc, if you're going to be Neighbors, you're going to have to find other ways to score than off of the rush because that's what this team's MO seems to be.
All right. The other big takeaway that you had from last night's game, Alex.
Yeah.
This is the most predictable possible takeaway for you from a preseason game. You're back in with Sonny?
Nothing revs my engine more than a fourth line goal scorer. Nothing gets me hotter than that. And Oscar Sundqvist has done it. Makes sense because the Sun's beating down right on us here in St. Louis. 2 games, 2 preseason games. Yeah, give me it. You know that it was great. 2 preseason games. He has scored goals standing right in front of the net. And guess what this team didn't do last year? Stand in front of the net. Oscar Sundqvist, I don't know if he's going to make 50 games this season because, frankly, when you've dealt with what he's dealt with, that's a tough thing to do, especially when you play his style. But I could promise you the 50 or more games that he plays in for the St. Louis Blues, he's going to be a dude who parks himself in front of the net. He'll get third-line opportunities. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets power play opportunities on that second unit because he plays like a power forward. And frankly, that fourth line is going to have 3 dudes that play that way. They're not fast, other than Toropchenko, especially if Nick Ritchie's on it. But what they are is they're heavy. They create space. And it's everything Craig Berube wants. So if Sonny's healthy, Sonny's playing in this lineup.
What are you
going to try and trade him like you did Barbie last year?
No, because Sonny's cheap. He's you're good.
Okay, good.
He has more value to you than he does elsewhere. Reasonable expectations for Oscar Sundqvist.
Well, that's where you lost me. Like in goal production or points?
Just in terms of what you're expecting from Oscar Sundqvist this year, give it to me in whatever direction you want to. Like 10 goals?
I'd go 12 to 15 for Sonny because I do believe he's going to get power play time. And
career high is 14.
Yeah, I 12 to 15 is where I'm at with that. I think he's going to get second power play unit time. I think you'll see some time in the top 9 if they need him there. That would be my goal production from him. And I would say just big picture, it's the most successful fourth line that you've had since 2019. All around game. Defensively, average time on ice, point production from the 3 players, and Sonny's going to be the key cog in all of that. If Sonny's out with injury, you're going to see that fourth line take a step backwards. That's my big prediction with him.
I would go 10 to 12 goals. That would be the range that I'm hoping for out of him. My concern is, are we overhyping the improvement on the fourth line from what it was early last season? Not what it ended up being, because I'm with you, Alex. At the end of the year, really the middle of the season, after they had just traded Nolachari, there were some serious growing pains. But Nolachari was a really good player for the Blues last season.
But the wingers weren't.
They had Toropchenko. Toropchenko, I feel like we talk about him as if he was in and out of the lineup all year. He played 70 games for the Blues.
He
last
also
season.
played top 9 minutes most of the time because Josh Levo was up and down, and I mean Tyler Pitlick was the other guy that was on that fourth line with him. The 3 guys, 4 if we're going to add in Blaze/Neighbors.
I think that's the biggest thing is that they're going to have some consistency.
Yeah, I mean, look, Nolachari is a better player than Oscar Sundqvist. I'll be the first to say that. Like, he's blocking shots, although I do think people don't give Sonny enough credit for his ability to block shots and put his body in front. He's going to play like Nolachari. It's just a matter of does he stay healthy? And then it comes down to the consistency on the wing. And frankly, I mean, look, Tyler Pitlick was good for the Blues last year because they didn't have much else. But Tyler Pitlick, Nathan Walker, the guys that were consistent fourth liners when they needed Toropchenko and Barbashev to be up, you're going to have Ritchie, Neighbors, Blaze, Sonny, and Toropchenko, 5 guys competing for 3 spots. That's a really good fourth line.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Blues off tonight, back in action tomorrow night against the Blackhawks. Pregame coverage with Alex will begin for that one tomorrow right here on your home of the Blues 101 ESPN. 6:30 is the time for that. Coming up next, we're diving into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into the juncture alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone, I want to start with this. Were you old enough to watch Shrek when you were a kid?
Yeah, I've seen Shrek.
But did you watch it when it came out, or is this something that you saw after the fact? I can't remember what year it came out, honestly.
I want to say after it came out. I don't think I saw it like
Alex,
in
do you remember
theaters.
what year it came out?
Oh, 2001.
Look at
that
you,
right?
right on, yeah.
Then I definitely saw it after.
Yeah. Lord Farquhar.
I loved Shrek.
I did too as a kid. Donkey. And in the morning, we're making waffles. Love that
Great movie. All-time great movie. The reason why I bring this up, Alex, is because the home from the movie Shrek is now posted on Airbnb for you to stay
It's
in.
not a real thing. It was a cartoon.
It's in the Scottish hills.
It's in far, far away. It's not a real place.
Shrek's Swamp is a stumpy, secluded haven fit for solitude-seeking
outta here.
ogre. It's the first time ever a handful of the biggest fans, thanks to yours truly, are available to go into the swamp. Never mind the beware signs. They're just for decoration.
Yeah, cool. I can't wait to go stay at a swamp on vacation. This is stupid.
No, I'm in.
This is stupid. If I'm going to stay at a swamp, I'm going to stay somewhere where there's bed bugs.
I would go to Scotland for this.
Yeah, Scotland's
What?
beautiful.
If we could get a group of
I'd
people
go to
to go out there for
Scotland,
this.
but not to stay at a Shrek swamp Airbnb.
But it's not like in a swamp area.
I mean, it's Scotland, man. It's not
Yeah.
like you're going to Gainesville.
Yeah.
you're not going to the Everglades here.
Well, it might be. Nah, I'm out on this. This is
If you could go to any house area, whatever, real or fictional, from a TV show or a movie, what would you choose? What's the spot that you would go to? Like, are you going to...
man.
T-Bone's probably going
That's
to
a
some
good one.
nerdy place like a Star Wars Galactica.
Lord of the Rings, Hobbit Hole.
I was thinking a star. They got the Cantina bar and I think what's Disney?
Disney World, yeah.
Someone
Is
just
it Disney World or Disneyland?
someone
Disney
just
World.
texted "you're stupid"
in.
and misspelled "your."
That sounds
Got him.
Hey,
I
I
know,
understand
T-Bone.
your pain.
I know.
Just be universal.
And I don't know. I don't know if there's like a spot that like I'd want to go to.
Pandora would be wild. From Avatar.
Oh yeah,
I hated Avatar, so
Really?
Yeah.
that's a good movie.
The Way of Water was actually better than I expected.
Yeah.
It took us a while to get to it. I finally watched it about a month ago.
Nice.
Pretty
Can I
good
live?
movie.
Ooh, living underwater, that'd
Yeah.
be fun.
Would you want to be above or below the water? Like, would you
Below
want to
the
be
water.
the world that you saw in Avatar, the first one, or the Way of Water?
Oh, actually, I might go. I would go the second one because I saw what that looked like. That looked nice.
Oh, somebody mentioned the Willy Wonka chocolate factory.
Oh, I do not want to go there. I saw
As
it
a
happen.
place
in
to
this
go.
one.
Oompa Loompa scared the hell out of me.
I hated that movie.
The
That
Home
movie
Alone
terrified
house
me.
in winter would be fun.
Oh, that's good.
That'd be
That's
a really
real
cool one.
That's an option.
Yeah, that'd be
Which
a really
one?
cool one. The Home Alone house. You've never seen Home Alone?
No, okay. I didn't. First,
Never seen it.
first I thought you said like Home Improvement. I was like, the ones that we always see like in those decorating shows. This makes more sense.
He was so mad. Alex was like, hold on. I can't do a show with you
I've seen
anymore.
Home Alone. I've
Guys,
seen
come
Home
on.
Alone. It's fine.
Like the actual building that The Office was filmed in would be cool too. I'd like to do that. That'd be awesome.
That checks out.
That would be cool. I would stay there.
Yeah.
The house from The Sopranos would be cool.
Oh yeah. Well, anything like that would be sick because you're talking about a mansion.
Have a pet duck or goose. Goose. That's what it was.
Are you referencing Sopranos that you said is a stupid show because that's not allowed?
I remember he had a pet goose or something in like the first episode. That's about all I remember.
It wasn't a pet, first of all.
Oh, it was just a goose.
It was the birds that... It's a metaphor, man. It's the whole thing.
Have you ever seen the movie Scream?
Yeah.
Stu's house would be awesome. That was a big freaking house. That'd be cool. It's kind of weird that I picked a movie where there's like, a bunch of killing in it, but hey, let's go.
People really don't like Avatar.
is stupid.
What? You aren't alone
It's
in
a
this
terrible
regard.
movie. It's a terrible movie.
It's a famous movie. It's old, and I've only seen it like once or twice, but it's based in the tree in Disney
This
World.
is going to be like a 2015 show.
No. It's like from the
Snow White?
No.
Are you talking about the animal tree?
Yeah.
That's from Lion King.
No.
Isn't that what that's based off
There's
of,
a
the Lion
tree.
King?
There's a movie in the 70s or 80s that was made, probably older than that actually, that there's a tree that the family lived in. And I think
Swiss
it's in
Family
Disney World.
Robinson?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it's not in Disney World.
Yes, it is.
It's a movie. What are you?
No, that tree's represented in Disney World.
Oh, they sent a great one, The Shining Hotel.
Oh, hold on, we haven't
that'd be
figured out mine
terrifying.
yet.
Oh, I would do that in a
Far
heartbeat.
from the tree?
Dude, I
I
think
have
you're
no
making something.
idea
You're
what you're
making
talking
something
about.
up.
Oh, come on. It's a real thing. The tree is in Disney World, I'm
The
pretty
Tree
sure.
of Life. is what you're talking about. It's an Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, that's from.
But it's not from
Lion King.
No, it's not. It's from.
Are you really questioning a dude who lives
Yes.
Disney right now?
Yeah, you live in current Disney. I live in the past. That tree would be fun to live.
Telling
in.
you, I'm pretty
Bugs
sure.
Life?
No, that's
it
not
wasn't a tree of
No.
life.
No, I'll have to figure this out. I'm telling you,
You're
there is a
incorrect.
movie, a text line. Come on, somebody's got to know what I'm talking about. There is a movie where a family gets stranded on an island and they end up
Treasure
living
Island?
in a tree.
No, there's not a movie where a
There
dude
is.
gets
I've
stranded
seen
on an
it.
island and lives in a tree.
Hold on, I got to text my parents.
Someone
They're not
said,
doing anything right
Someone
now.
said The Conjuring House. That's another good one. That's a real spot to go check out. I'm all about those like horror movie houses. That would be pretty cool. The Shining might be my number one though. Like I've told Katie I want to like take a trip to Colorado so that we can go see that hotel.
So you're super into like
Horror films, yeah. Big into horror films. This is my time of year, baby. I've already started them.
Really? What's your like? We're hanging out with Alex for Halloween. You get 3 horror films to show us.
Oh, okay. The original Halloween,
Okay.
the original Conjuring, and then The Exorcist. Those would be my 3.
That's a pretty good list.
Those are good.
How many of those have you seen?
I've seen The Exorcist. What were the other ones you said?
Conjuring and
I've seen The Conjuring.
Halloween.
I've not seen Halloween.
Okay. That's one to put on.
I don't like
That's a good
horror
one.
movies. So I don't
Swiss
watch
Family
them.
Robinson is
That's
what
what I
everybody's
originally
saying.
said, but they weren't stranded on an island. They lived in a tree.
Yeah, but I thought they were
But that's
stranded
not
on the
what
island.
the Animal Kingdom tree is based off of. The Animal
I'm pretty
Kingdom
sure
tree
it
is no. They have
that tree is in Disney World.
they have a Swiss Family Robinson like tree house in Disney World, but that's not
Swiss
the Animal
Family
Kingdom
Robinson
tree.
is a movie.
Oh,
that
I know
thinking-
what the tree. Yeah, you're thinking of a very different
You're thinking
area
of
in
the-
Disney World.
it's
The
a-
tree that you're thinking of is
In Magic Kingdom, it's like a tree house.
it's on Animal Kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tree
Yeah, but you're
house
thinking
area
of
that
the
you're
tree
thinking of
with
is
all of the
very
animal
different.
faces on it.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, but my tree is in Disney World.
Yeah, but you weren't talking about the same one.
I would live there. That looks
All
nice.
right, coming up next.
What just happened?
Have the Brewers overtaken the Cardinals of the as the class of the NL Central? And if so, how long do we expect that to last? We'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend and insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. When it comes to insurance, she truly is the best because of the customer service. And what I love about Tracy and her team is they're always communicating with you. You know, sometimes your insurance is going to go up in price, but what you want to know, because you're paying the money for it, is what falls under that umbrella, what takes care of the coverage. If there's flooding in the basement, if there's some type of accident with your car or your home, are you taken care of? And that's where Tracy's always on top of that stuff. She's always communicating with you. She's the one contacting you, letting you know what falls underneath that umbrella. So get the customer service that you desperately need when it comes to taking care of your car and your home, and use Tracy Bibb and her team with Allstate. Give her a call today. Get a free non-committal quote. She makes everything so simple. You just tell her my name, and she will take it from there, give you the quote. She'll even cancel your insurance that you previously have, and you're taking care of the rest of the way. 314-328-4260. 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys want to, you can check us out on YouTube. It's at 101 ESPN STL. Alex, the Brewers once again won the NL Central last night. They have now done so 3 times in the last 5 years. The Cardinals have done so twice in that stretch. If you're looking at playoff berths since the 2018 season, Brewers have been to the postseason 5 times. Cardinals have been to the postseason 4 times. Alex, when you think about the class of the NL Central right now, do you think that it belongs to the Brewers or the Cardinals?
Is it weird that I feel like it doesn't belong to either of them, and it's like still an open division? Because I just don't view the Brewers in terms of dominating that division. Like, when I think of teams that own a division, I think of the Atlanta Braves in the East. I think for the longest time it was the Yankees in their division, Tampa Bay now in their division. Like, those are the teams you think of. When I think of the NL Central, I think of 3 teams that are trying to take it and run with it. And maybe it's just because it's sustained time and it's one season, Cardinals get it, one season Milwaukee has it. But if you were to like tell me who owns it now, I still would pick the Cardinals. And I know that seems weird because they're awful, but I don't think Milwaukee is going to be this good moving forward. I think Milwaukee is going to have to hit a rebuild, and they're going to fall out of it.
I think I agree with Alex. I don't know if there is. I wouldn't side with anybody is the class of the NL Central, because when I look at the Milwaukee Brewers, when I think back to when the Cardinals were the quote-unquote class of the NL Central, I think of a team that had success over a sustained period of time, and not only had sustained period of success in the regular season, but had some success in the postseason as well. Brewers have not had both sustained period of success of winning the division constantly. They have not had success in the playoffs. And when I think back to the Cardinals and when they were the class of the division, what was their MO? It was out-drafting people, out-developing people, being good with pitching, good defense, and then had an offense. When I think Milwaukee, like, what do you think of as the Milwaukee Brewers?
All of those things by the offense?
I would say, I don't even know if I'd say the drafting and developing part, because they haven't done it on offense. I think they've done a fine job with their pitching, but they haven't done it on the offensive side. Because if we were going to say that they had a good offense, it would partly be because they developed it too. So I don't think that they should be classified as the class of the division. I think it's still up in the air. I don't know if anybody's really taken that reign since the Cardinals dropped off, or outside of the Cubs too, I should say. Cubs had it there for a little bit when they had their core. Now I don't know if anybody truly has it. I don't know if there is someone that is the class of the NL Central.
I think it's the Brewers. I do. Since the 2018 season, and I'm going back to that because that was the faded off season when the Cardinals ended up trading for Marcell Ozuna, and the Brewers ended up trading for Christian Yelich. It's kind of the point of delineation between these two organizations, of one going in the right direction, the other going in the wrong direction, right? And it was a sign of what was to come. The Brewers were patient. They waited for the right guy to become available, and they bet big on the correct guy. They have since done that on multiple other pieces. You look at their catching situation right now. They got the right Contreras. Cheaper. He's pretty much the same type of player, and they got him for a little bit less in terms of like them having to give up capital with prospects, Cardinals having to give up serious money for Willson. It's just been a consistent theme of the Brewers winning their trades, the Cardinals losing their deals over the last 6 years or so. You look at the records for these two teams. Cardinals have owned 461 games since the start of the 2018 season. The Brewers have won 483 games in that stretch. You look at the postseason success. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Brewers have had a ton of it, but they've both went to the NLCS, and the Brewers have a chance to go on another run this season where the Cardinals will not be able to go to that. Cardinals, meanwhile, have not gotten out of the wild card round in any other year in this stretch. At least the Brewers did get to the DS in 2021. Now, they lost 3-1 in that stretch, but they got there nonetheless. I think right now the class of the NL Central is the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, this is where I do agree with you guys. I think that's changing. I think that the Cardinals, as soon as next year, could get right back to the top of the NL Central. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to do. I think if you go out there and have the offseason that most people are demanding at this point the Cardinals to have, I think that's what it takes. Go out there and get one of the top pitchers available. Go out there and get one secondary pitcher that's available. And then go out there and overhaul your bullpen. I think you're right there with the Brewers. Hell, I think you're better than the Brewers. I also think this is the end of the Brewers run. And we have seen this over the years where you'll have a stretch of time where the Cubs were the top threat to the Cardinals. You'll have a stretch of time where it was the Pirates. You had a stretch of time where it was the Reds. Now it is the Brewers. The one constant, up until this season at least, has been that the Cardinals are right in that mix. And I expect that to be the case once again in the future. I think the next iteration of this NL Central is the Cardinals and Cubs once again battling for supremacy in the division.
Yeah, it just is so weird because you're absolutely right in everything you just said with Milwaukee and how they always seem to be at the top and always fighting. It just seems weird to say that they own the division when it feels like they never run away with it. You know, like it's always a competition for first place in the Central. But, I mean, when you've crowned it at least the last 5 years and you've had more success than the Cardinals, it's hard to deny that. I do agree, though. Milwaukee's probably going to lose Craig Counsell. They're probably going to trade away Corbin Burns. They don't really have the next wave, at least on the pitching side, coming up. I think Milwaukee is going to be headed more towards what Cincinnati was the last 5 years than what they've been the last 5 years. And I'm with you. I think it's the Cardinals. I think it's the Cubs. And I do believe the Cincinnati Reds are going to be in that conversation for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think the Reds will be in the conversation as well with the Cubs and the Cardinals. And I think BK's right. I think the Cardinals have the opportunity to take this open window and run through it and just get a huge head start on the Chicago Cubs, because I think the Cubs are going to spend, but it's going to come down to, you talked about the pivot point with the Brewers and the Cardinals when it came to trades. It's going to come down to who spends their money wiser, the Cardinals or the Cubs, and I think that will be what determines it. We'll see about the Cincinnati Reds. I love the young talent that they have. We'll see how their pitching continues to develop, and we'll see
if they're
about
willing to spend.
Yeah, that too.
Which they typically don't.
And I think Milwaukee will become arguably the class, because again, I still don't view them as a class of the Central. Well, maybe I should. But
a postseason run this year does it, right? If they were to go out there, like let's say they get to the NLCS.
No, because they got to keep the group together then. That would be my argument.
But I guess we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about looking back. You're talking about looking forward. I agree in the future, it requires more. They have to be able to continue to do this over time. But if we look back on the 2018 to 2023 stretch run for the NL Central, I think it will be hard to deny that the best team in the NL Central in that stretch, if the Milwaukee Brewers get back to another NLCS, was the Brewers. Because in that stretch, they will then have, other than the 2020 season, finished in the top 2 in the division basically every single season, will have made it to multiple NLCS appearances, made it to the NLDS one other time, and meanwhile in that stretch of time, the Cardinals got to the NLCS once and never made it out of the wild card any other season. I just find it really hard to argue that they are not the class of the division in this 6-year stretch if they end up doing that.
I think that relies solely on what they do in the postseason. I think if they get bounced in the wild card, they're the exact same as the Cardinals. You did a CS in the wild card.
I'm saying they have to go out there and make that.
And I just don't believe they will.
Yeah, and I guess that's where my thinking is. I have a tough time seeing them getting to the CS. Now they do, yes, then I think it is a different conversation. But I think when you look at what the Milwaukee Brewers are, like if they can't get to the CS, then I don't know if they ever had that period where they were the leader because they never keep the group together. Now, where it will become an interesting conversation is they have shown the ability to kind of quickly redo the team on the fly. Now, can they continue to do that? I think at some point your luck just runs out, and I think Milwaukee's getting close to that point.
They're trying to what the Cardinals have done.
Yeah.
They're building 90-win teams consistently.
Yeah, and we saw how that ended with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Bingo.
And I think that's where the luck is going to run out with the Milwaukee Brewers too.
Coming up next, does Torrey Krug gain anything with this with this Blues fan base based on his comments from yesterday? I honestly think he should. We'll discuss it here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley.
I wish we had that reaction
Hey,
on
T-Bone,
air.
go get him. Go get him.
Rockio!
Go get Rock.
Rockio!
So there's some big news that just dropped in the NBA. We'll get to the Torrey Krug comments here in just a moment. Tanner's going to go get Matt Rockio because he's the biggest NBA guy on the station.
I
So
really wish we had that reaction on the air.
we gotta give Rock some immediate reaction. So the news in the NBA is that the Milwaukee Bucks just said, bleep it, we're all in. T-Bone went the wrong way.
T-Bone. He's doing that on purpose. He just said, I'm going to go to the bathroom
The
instead.
Milwaukee Bucks just went all in, Alex. They have traded for Damian Lillard. They have done so as part of a 3-team deal that does include the Phoenix Suns as well. DeAndre Ayton, I think this is really interesting for Portland, actually. DeAndre Ayton is going to be going up to Portland as part of this deal from Phoenix. Milwaukee is going to be giving up in this deal some unprotected firsts, some pick swaps, stuff like that, and then some basically spare parts. I love this.
I'm so freaking pumped.
Absolutely love it. That they are going to go out there and make this kind of a deal to go all in on a guy that is the best player in the history of their franchise in Giannis. It's perfect. The other thing that this does is it avoids Dame going to their biggest threat in the East with the Miami Heat, who were considered to be the biggest contender for Dame prior to this one. Alex, your thoughts?
I'm so pumped for this one. Multiple reasons. One, when you get such a star athlete like Giannis who wants competition and wants competitive players with his team, he wants to see his team say, let's go win. Just went the best way you could go in terms of making this trade for Giannis and building up the rest of that squad. But on top of it, too, I'm pumped for Dame. Because being on Portland, where the team has been fine, and I mean,
love that he's going to another small market.
Yeah,
I think that's so awesome.
But I love the fact that he's going to a team that just said, bleep it, we want to win and let's get him. Whereas he was on a team for so long that never wanted to do that for him.
You know what else forced this to happen? Giannis.
Yeah.
Giannis put pressure on the front office and said, hey,
the best player.
I want to be in Milwaukee. I love it here. But if this is not going to be a team that we continue to build up to be a championship contender, then I'm going to have to go elsewhere. And the Bucks front office responded to that by saying, all right, let's make sure that this is a championship contending team for you, a championship contending organization. He was eligible for his contract extension, I think a couple of days ago officially, was when he could technically be re-signed. I wonder if we see as part of this, them get some kind of confirmation from him that he's going to be there long term. Rockio, you're the biggest NBA guy on this.
I wish you could recreate your reaction when we told you Milwaukee.
I asked Rockio while we were in break, have you seen the news yet? He said, no, I haven't seen it. What happened? I said, we just got the Dame trade. He said, well, where'd he go? Is he going to Toronto? I said, no, keep guessing. And he named like 12 different teams in the Eastern Conference, did not name the Milwaukee Buccaneers. Your response now that we have seen the news that he's going to Milwaukee is what?
This is insane. I mean, you talk about a small market team, but with some new money, obviously with the new ownership group, goes and makes the big move after all the stink that Giannis kind of made. I also think it's funny that yesterday Drew Holiday told the Milwaukee Journal-Constitution, I can't wait, I want to retire as a Buck. I think we're building something great here. I think it's going to continue.
Yes.
And so
was it James Nail that was DFA on his birthday? Basically the same thing.
So it's an insane trade, but also I think what happened in the NBA as well, because I think the Ayton part of this is also going to, that's huge. The fact that the Suns just kind of changed their core and said, listen, the problems between, our one of our better players and our coach and the other good guys we got to get it out of here. We're clearing the board there. So, I mean, I think really two of the best contenders in the NBA got better today. Obviously the Bucks, and I really do think the Suns got a little bit better too in the West, and that's an interesting factor.
The Suns got deeper.
I was going to say,
I don't know if they got better, but they definitely got deeper, and that was one of their biggest issues last year at the end of the season is they had zero depth. They were like Miami Heat with LeBron, where you're bringing dudes in off of the street. And it's like, oh, this is going to get old really quick. And if you have any injuries to your stars, you cannot withstand them. So I do think they got a little deeper with this kind of a deal. T-Bone, you're a slight NBA guy. You love your Pacers, and you're a slight NBA guy.
He's a homer for the Pacers.
Your thoughts on this?
I think it's a great trade for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I love the fact that, to what you said, Giannis said just a week ago or so.
They call them the Buccaneers, the Bucks, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, come on,
what
NBA
a
guy, NBA guy, unbelievable. But I love the fact that they went out and did this because there was no reporting that Milwaukee was interested in Damian Lillard. This kind of came in, just fly under the radar, get the deal done, and I think that's the part that I kind of like most about this was they felt the pressure, as you said, from Giannis, and they said, all right, let's go and let's get it done. Because the reports last night or 2 nights ago was, oh, Toronto's in this. And I was like, okay, what is Toronto doing? And it turns out they're not even involved in this deal at all. And Milwaukee just said, we got to go do this because we need to keep the franchise icon, the franchise player here in Milwaukee. And I expect to see Giannis sign a contract extension now with the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're going to be one of the top teams to beat and be an NBA title favorite.
One of the biggest criticisms, and I think it's a fair one, of the NBA over the last 15 years or so has been that the dominant markets, so Boston, LA, New York, they're the teams that matter, and you can't get stars to these other markets, right? You can't find a way to pull them away from the top markets in the sport. That is no longer the case. Denver is considered to be the best team in the NBA right now. It's not a massive market by any stretch of the imagination. Milwaukee is now going to be the title favorite going into the season, especially as a team coming out of the Eastern Conference. Cleveland is a really good squad right now. Memphis is one of the best teams in the NBA right now. Sacramento, one of the best teams. Phoenix, not considered to be like an LA type of a market, one of the best teams in the NBA as well. I think the league is in a really good spot right now, in part because you're starting to see some of these lower level markets, at least in the NBA, rise up to a level that we have not seen in recent years. And I think that's good for the league to have a little bit of this turnover.
Take notes, baseball. Baseball, the major criticism of baseball, the small market teams do not spend money. And this isn't necessarily spending money. I know. But let's be honest.
In baseball.
Small baseball teams should be able to pull off not just deals like this, but be willing to spend money and be willing to spend significant capital to build a contender.
St. Louis could be Milwaukee. You could be that. You could be the team that has a couple of future Hall of Famers on your roster that you're building around, that they put a little bit of pressure on you to go out there and spend the money or make the big trade this offseason. Your version of Giannis is Nolan Arenado. He's the one that can put the pressure on you to say.
Who also called out the front office multiple times to make significant moves to make the team better.
They tricked him into opting in.
Well, and then they sold him at a nice dinner in the offseason and said, Wayno's back.
Who's their version of Drew Holiday?
Donovan?
Is it?
I don't know
who they're. Gorman, maybe?
Donovan or Edmond?
The piece that you don't want to part with, but you're like, got to do it.
Donovan
Who said they want to retire here in St. Louis recently? Anybody?
Mikolas wants to be here long
Willson
term.
Contreras.
All right, Mikolas gone.
Contreras is probably the answer.
Oh, poor Willson.
Unfortunately, he doesn't have the value around the league. All right, final thoughts, Rockio.
It's just like you said, the big thing here is the complexion of the NBA being changed here, because it's not just that they traded for a big name guy; it's that they're going to get the second contract out of the best player in the NBA. And again, that's not something we ever thought that the mid markets could do. In fact, it looked like basketball was going to change and move just mountains to make their cap work so that smaller market teams could extend their guys. So I love the fact that Milwaukee said, screw all that. We're probably going to have to go to the luxury tax for at least maybe one season, but we're going to keep our guy here for the long term. Giannis is playing in a Bucks jersey his entire career, and I love seeing a mid-market team make that move, even if, again, it is one with new money that can pay a luxury tax. The fact that you can make it work, and if you win a championship and you get the good young player at the right time, that's a good thing for the NBA in a long-term view.
It's Matt Rockio. His show talks more NBA than anybody else on the station.
Amen to
You'll
that.
hear his thoughts with Kerry Davis tomorrow morning from 7 to 10 a.m. right here on 101 ESPN. Thanks for hopping in, Wreck-It Ralph.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man. It's Matt Rockio hopping in the studio.
I love that, man.
The Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks are the best teams in the NBA. What a time to be alive.
Imagine being DeAndre Ayton, where you were on a team that was in the NBA Finals and you complain because you don't like the market. And, well, welcome to Portland with no Damian Lillard.
Portland's nice.
Portland's great. The team might not be.
Well, I don't think he's going to be there. I think they're going to trade him.
Moved again?
I'm curious to see what Portland ends up doing here. They've got a really good young roster. Like, they're not going to be a good team, don't get me wrong, but
they should trade him to the Bucks,
2-3 years from now, them and Utah are setting themselves up for a bright future. The Phoenix Suns were in this spot like 3 years ago, and then they got good really quickly. It can turn over quicker than anybody expects it to in the NBA. You just got to find that one guy that can kind of make things work for you. For the Suns, they ended up, Devin Booker was the guy that became a legit superstar in the NBA. People wanted to play with him, and now we see what they are.
Hashtag fear the deer. New team.
Coming up next, Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and I've got some exciting news for all the men out there. Victory Men's Health has launched a new telehealth site. It's called Victory RX. You can go there at victoryrx.com. Men, you go there, get prescribed that ED medication that you've been looking for. It's going to be a super easy process. You go to the site, victoryrx.com. You'll do your entire consult all via text. Victory Men's Health is a trusted and known brand across the area. They've treated thousands of men in their standalone locations, and now they're giving you easier access to that #1 selling ED medication. This chewable tablet, you can be assured of it that it's going to be the dosage that works for you. And because it's a chewable tablet, you don't have to worry about what you ate, what you drank earlier in the day. That is not the case for some of those other known brands out there. They will potentially be affected by your food or drink, not with VictoryRx.com. VictoryRx.com is the place that you can go. It'll be a chewable tablet. It's got active ingredients with both Viagra and Cialis. VictoryRx.com. That's VictoryRx.com. Play hard.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals back in action tonight as it'll be a 6:40 first pitch. Zach Thompson on the mound for St. Louis, and Wade Miley will be getting the start for the Milwaukee Brewers. And tomorrow night here on 101 ESPN, Blues back in action as they take on the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7:30. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at Londoff.com, LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Let's go out to the 101 ESPN hotline right now. Coming off of last night's preseason game, the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, was on the call. I was able to stream that one over on the Bally Sports app while I was listening to it right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. Kerbs, we appreciate the time as always, my man. How you doing today?
Doing good, BK. How are you?
Doing very well. So let's start big picture here, Kerbs. What was your biggest takeaway from the preseason win last night, the big one in the battle for the blue here in St. Louis?
St. Louis reigns supreme.
Yeah, probably nothing all that shocking from a takeaway standpoint, other than I think it was good to get some of those guys, the veteran players, in their first game. The game looked like it had that, 70 to 80%, speed and, a Christmas type feel to it. So classic preseason game. Couple things that did jump off of that. Malcolm Subban, who apparently was very good from those that I talked to that were at the game in Wichita. I thought he looked really good in the game last night as well. And look, that Malcolm Subban isn't going to single-handedly, play really well in the preseason and oust Joel Hofer or Jordan Binnington. But he is definitely going to make himself known that he's good to go. And if there's an injury, he wants the opportunity. And so I thought that looked pretty good. Craig Berube talking about wanting to see more shots from the blue line. I think that's a mentality that we can keep an eye on as we see the Blues play the Blackhawks tomorrow. And I don't expect to see, a huge NHL lineup for tomorrow, more than maybe the younger guys making the trip. But the reality of it is if Craig Berube's making a comment of, I really thought we could have had more shots from the blue line get through, I think that's where you start to see if the focus of the style of play that he's looking for comes through. So those are a couple things I took off of last night.
Is that going to be an emphasis this season, Kerbs? Because Craig Berube is a quality over quantity type of coach, and when it comes to shots, but him mentioning the focus of the players going to the front of the net and looking for those rebounds, are we going to see a lot more shots on goal from the blue line this year?
There is nothing new about this approach to Craig Berube's coaching and the style that he thinks that it takes to win. Get to the dirty areas, get to the front of the net. If your forwards are getting to the front of the net, and so far through the 3 preseason games, the majority of the goals you've seen scored have been those kind of grinded out down low type of goals. You've got to get the shots there. To get the shots there, the defensemen have to funnel the puck to the front of the net. I know they had a decent number of shots blocked last night. It's going to be a focus of this team. And it's even Craig Berube. Look, it's not so much to me quality over quantity. He just doesn't want players taking a shot to take a shot. If you have possession in the offensive zone and you're cycling it down low and you're wearing the other team down, just to put it to the net on a shot that really has no chance of going on, that the other goaltender can save and maybe cover it up and allow his team to change, he doesn't want you wasting those types of things. But even he said last night, we did not get enough to the front of the net. Analytics and all the other stuff, percentages put into the mix, you do need a certain number of shots to increase your chances of scoring some goals. And 14 over 60 minutes is typically not going to be enough to win. So, plus, look at this offense, or look at the defensive players you have. All 50 points last season. Torrey Krug does. Colton Parayko. There's your top 4. Callie Rosen's clearly shown that he can do it. Perunovic has shown that he can do it. I mean, you've got the ability, and to be an attacking style team with that type of pressure that you need to put to create some chaos in the offensive zone, your defensemen not only have to be willing to take some shots, they've got to get them through to the net.
Kerbs, we're almost exactly 2 weeks away from the start of the regular season for the Blues. And if we're being honest, there's not a ton of roster battles on this team. And what I mean by that is guys that can play their way on or off of the roster. There's competition internally for playing time, but the roster spots are mostly secured, it feels like, at this point. One spot that I am curious about, though, is Nick Ritchie, who was in that game last night. You got to see him with the fight in that one. He was removed from the game because he didn't have his fight strap on, and that is a disappointing way for it to end for him. When you look at his opportunity here in St. Louis, Kerbs, do you think he is somebody that can or will play his way into that fourth line role here?
I I think yes on all fronts to that. And actually, there are, that here's the questions that you're going to have, okay? I believe Doug Armstrong has really created the competition by bringing in somebody like Nick Ritchie. And even if he had not, you are still going to have a forward or two. And let's assume everybody's healthy. You before you put your final roster together, you were going to have to put a forward or two plus a defenseman or something on waivers if everybody's healthy, because you've got guys on one-way contracts, and I don't think you have enough roster spots for them. And so I think, to be honest with you, I think anywhere from the entire fourth line is up for grabs. Because, look, you wanted Jake Neighbors to play, and yes, not just theoretically, but in practicality. And this is not a comment on how Jake Neighbors' camp is going in any way. I'm using him as a name holder here. But if Jake Neighbors' camp isn't what it needs to be, and they could still send him down to the minors. Well, he could go down to the minors, or he doesn't have to play. He could be in the press box, and that opens up opportunities for somebody else. I don't think the fourth line, for example, is in any way defined. There's a Nathan Walker, a Nick Ritchie, Mackenzie McEachran, Alexei Toropchenko, and there's a whole slew of guys. So I believe that competition is quite real. And somebody like Nick Ritchie, because he's shown the ability to score goals as well, plus play a Craig Berube typical style at the age that he's at, below 30, I think there's a great opportunity for him. And frankly, I didn't have a chance today to ask him why the tie down wasn't tied down, whether he forgot or what, or didn't think he was going to get into a fight. I don't know, but he missed an opportunity then to come back out and get more shifts. So, yeah, I think it's a really legit chance for Nick Ritchie to do something. But keep in mind, for the Blues, because he's on a PTO, for the Blues to sign him, somebody's got to go out, and that's where that competition is.
So that's where I wanted to have a follow-up with you, Kerbs, and we're talking to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, for another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. You mentioned the player that I wanted to ask you about, which is Jake Neighbors, because if Nick Ritchie makes this roster and he's on that fourth line, potentially with Sonny and Toropchenko like he was last night, and then I would assume they see Sammy Blais as that third-line winger right now. Maybe that ends up changing over the next couple of weeks, but right now it appears to be that way. That does leave Neighbors potentially without a spot in the top four lines of this NHL roster. Is there a scenario where he ends up starting out the season at least down in the AHL and is your first call-up if there's a significant injury?
Yeah, I would never say no, there's not a scenario, because, the players have to play their way on. And something Larry Plow always was very adamant about was asset management. If you think you want to preserve some depth, and there's a player that even though they may deserve to be on your roster, maybe they're good enough to be on your roster, but you don't want to lose another guy for the time being because it's the early part of the season or whatever. Yeah, sometimes that could happen because of asset management. I don't anticipate it happening, but at the same time, still in and out of the lineup and waiting for and earning the consistency aspect of it could play a role in it. So all those situations and scenarios that you're alluding to, Brandon, I think are very real for him and maybe another player too.
Is it more valuable for him to be that 13th forward up here, Kerbs, or go down to Springfield and get top-line minutes in your mind?
It's a great question still. I think sometimes that varies. I think if you're going to consider yourself a team in transition and the transition time is a little bit, more of the priority than getting him the reps up here, I think is going to be really important. So look, if you're going to carry, let's say you carry two extra forwards, that's where, the other guy's playing, could be in and out of the line on the fourth line, a Walker, a McEachran, whomever. And then you're putting, when there's opportunity, you're moving Jake Neighbors up the lineup based on how he's playing, down the lineup, out of the lineup, how that works. I see him being part of that rotation that the players themselves will define. Look, Doug Armstrong met with the players, and he said the same thing to the players that he pretty much said when he had his presser the day that camp opened up. And he said, I look at about 10 spots. Everything else is for grabs. And the equity that has been earned over recent years is gone. So, if you feel comfortable just because you have a contract, don't feel comfortable because somebody could come in here, and he challenged people to come in here and take somebody's job. And I believe he's being really open and honest about those opportunities.
Curbs, we appreciate the time, man. It was great to hear you guys back on the call last night for the Blues versus the Blue Jackets. Looking forward to tomorrow night's game between the Blues and the Blackhawks. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
All right, guys. Have an awesome week.
See you, guys. It's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. One thing that he said there at the end, Alex, that I found interesting, he mentioned the fact that they could have 2 extra forwards. Not disagreeing with him necessarily. I would be surprised by that. I don't think they're going to take 2 extra forwards into the season. I think they'll take the 1 because you have so many defensemen right now, and you have more questions about who can actually sustain that playing time on the defensive side of things. It sounds crazy because of what the expectations are that have been placed upon Jake Neighbors. I don't think it's outlandish to believe he's going to start the year in the AHL at all. I'm starting to wonder if that is actually the most likely scenario for him.
I mean,
or unless they're okay with him being that 13th forward. If they're okay with that, sure, keep him up.
Yeah.
But I think is going to be what they have to weigh.
That really comes down to, do guys play well enough that you don't want to lose them through waivers? And does Jake Neighbors show you enough that says, okay, he doesn't need more reps as a top line guy. He can still grow while he's playing third or fourth line minutes. Here's the thing, though. I do wonder if they carry 14 forwards. This was the discussion we had last week. As much as I'm with you, like, you've got a ton of defensemen. What are you going to do? Let's say that Oskar Sundqvist has some type of injury. You're going to need another centerman.
But you can just go ahead and you can call up a guy.
Maybe, but then you got more waivers that play into this. Whereas if you keep one of them up.
Well, I mean, the only way that you have the waivers that come into it, the guy that you're calling up is most likely Nikita Alexandrov in that spot.
But what I'm saying is the defenseman you're going to have to send down, depending on how long the player is out for. Because when you bring somebody up,
the salary cap, put him on the injured list.
The salary cap plays into it as well, to where if you don't have enough wiggle room to bring up that player with your salary cap, then you can't shuffle that around.
Sure.
And on the 8 defenseman side of it, you got to take waivers into account with Callie Rosen, and I think Tyler Tucker was like that fringe player.
I think he has to go through waivers.
I do too. I was talking to Ryan Smith, the Springfield Thunderbirds play-by-play guy, and he said the same thing. Who are you sending down? Or I'm sorry, who are you keeping on here with 8 defensemen that you don't?
Those 2. Or Perunovic.
Well, that's the question.
Those are the 3.
Then you have to ask the question, does it benefit them in terms of growth of being up here or playing top minutes in the minors?
I would keep Perunovic down in the AHL from what we've seen so far. There's 2 weeks left. He could change that, but I think now that would be the way that I would go about it.
I'm with you there.
I would play the roster management game. And then it becomes a question of, is it more valuable to keep Nikita Alexandrov up as that 13th forward? I would. Or Jake Neighbors? I think I would. I have higher hopes, expectations for Jake Neighbors long-term than I do for Nikita Alexandrov, and so I would have less of a concern about Nikita Alexandrov sitting in the press box than I would about Jake Neighbors sitting in the press box.
It always comes down to the waivers thing, and, do you want to risk losing one of McEachran, Walker, or Callie Rosen, or Tyler Tucker? Those are the 4 guys that you're going to have to debate internally.
McEachran and Walker. We've seen what they look like here. They're not difference makers. You went out and you brought in 4th-liners for a reason. This is no disrespect to any of those guys that you're talking about, Alex. But the Blues are trying to win with numbers on the defensive core. They're trying to win with talent on that 4th line. Alexei Toropchenko should play basically every single night that he's healthy for. You talked about Sundqvist and how much he changes the complexion of that 4th line. If he's healthy, every night he should be in there.
Absolutely.
And if they decide to sign Nick Ritchie, that is a guy that should be in there almost every single night. So there's your options. They sit and they stick, and that's it. And then you have a 13th guy. It's kind of like the Cardinals outfield situation this year, right? Where we were just waiting for somebody to run with their opportunity. That's what you have potentially with this 4th line. They're running with their opportunity, and it makes those other players that you're talking about expendable for the Blues.
Yep.
That hasn't happened on the blue line.
Yep.
You haven't had guys that have run with those opportunities, so you keep the numbers there while you allow your 4th line players to really figure it out.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to come down to, and that's why I would imagine tomorrow is going to be a large chunk of the younger players like the Buldukes and Deans, and it's going to be a large chunk of the fringe players. You have to send a certain amount of NHL games played in preseason games, but tomorrow is going to be the final audition for a lot of guys before that first round of cuts.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Hey, the Fast Lane's going to be live from 2 to 6 on Friday at Auto Centers, Nissan, and Herculaneum for their huge anniversary sale. You can check out 750 new and used vehicles of almost every make and model in stock, discounted, ready for sale. Plus, spin to get an additional $1,000 off. You can register to win a new Polaris ATV and so much more. The Fastlane Live Friday from Auto Center's Nissan Anniversary Sale in Herculaneum. BK and Ferrario Rewind coming up next. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
I'm going to be out tomorrow. Alex and T-Bone has me from 11 to 2. I'll be back in on Friday to make my fantastic, no doubt about it, definitely going to win picks for the week.
Dude, not only do you have to win out, but we have to lose out. So I would just accept the loss.
You guys can each get a point. That'd be fine.
Yeah, but you have to get all 3 of yours right.
That's the hard part, and we know how that's going to go. So I'm looking forward to being punished next week.
Should we just throw all of our picks just to watch him have the opportunity to beat us and only get one right?
We don't submit a pick.
You guys would be better by throwing your picks than I am at actually making real ones.
We'll do the equivalent of sitting our kickers when we're up by 2 points in fantasy football. Let's just sit them. All right, go ahead. We'll just wait.
You guys are just going to take all the big favorites. It's like, hey, take the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football against the Bears. I'm pretty sure they're going to win.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely my 3-point play.
Oh, I hate it so much. So we'll get to that on Friday. I'm sure the boys will have some great conversations tomorrow. I know you guys have Joey Vitale joining you here at 11:30. Curious to hear what he has to say about the fourth line configuration as well.
Some big guess. BK's out. We're always got something.
Oh, yeah. Army or Mo will probably be joining us tomorrow.
I'm guaranteed Ollie's going to join you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, no, he's got a game.
He's my homie.
You felt good about that statement that just came out of your mouth?
Yeah.
Fastlane is next.
Donkey!